I want you to picture this. You're sitting at dinner with your husband and your brother. The wine is good. The conversation is polite. And then you step outside for some air, and a stranger appears from the shadows, hands you a box, and tells you your husband is going to kill you before the week is over. You have exactly 3 seconds to decide. Do you laugh it off, or do you run? That was the night Rowan Clark's life cracked open. She thought the biggest battle she faced was keeping her father's vineyard alive. She had no idea her husband and her own brother had been working against her for years, draining trust, building lies, and waiting for the right moment to take everything. The wooden box a stranger left on the hood of her car? It held a secret that would expose them all. This story reminds us that loyalty cannot be assumed. It must be proven. And sometimes, the truth only finds you when you're willing to stop running from it. If that opening hit different, wait until the story goes deeper. Don't skip ahead. Every scene in this one matters. Like this video if you're already hooked. Leave a comment with your thoughts. Share it with a friend who loves a story with real weight to it. And subscribe, so you're always first to hear what we bring next. This content was manually researched, developed, and edited by our team to bring you meaningful stories with real lessons you can carry into your own life.
God, I still can't get this out of my head. My best friend, Derek, what he did. I wasn't there for all of it, but he told me some. And the rest? The rest came out later. It all started so simply, at some bright little cafe. Kayla was there with Derek and her brother Austin. The guys went up to pay, and in that moment, her whole world just cracked open. Some stranger, looking like he'd seen a ghost, walked right up to her. He pressed this little wooden box into her hand and whispered, "Don't sign a thing. Trust no one. You're going to need this tonight." Then he was just gone. Kayla, completely freaked, shoved it in her purse just as Derek slid back in, wearing that plastic smile he had. I'd seen that smile 1,000 times, but I guess I never noticed it didn't reach his eyes. The whole world must have felt wrong, you know? Later that night, they were at some fancy wine bar, and the silence between them was just brutal. Kayla could practically see the lies forming in his mouth. Derek leaned in, his voice all soft and worried, saying stuff like, "Kayla, honey, it's killing me seeing you so stressed. The vineyard is just too much for you." See what he was doing? Laying the groundwork, painting her as this fragile thing that couldn't handle her own life, so he could swoop in and be the hero. It's classic, textbook manipulation. And it makes me sick to my stomach that I never saw it. She was just holding on to her wine glass for dear life. But Derek, my buddy Derek, he just kept at it, putting his hand over hers with that practiced gentleness. He told her she was meant to be a teacher, not some cutthroat business owner, that her dad never would have wanted this kind of weight on her. "It's okay to let it go," he whispered. But that vineyard, man, it wasn't just a business. It was her family's entire life on 50 acres. It was the only thing her dad built after her mom passed. It was everything. And Derek, the guy who promised to protect her, was telling her to burn it all down. Then he said the number, $8.5 million. He said it like a dirty secret, painting this picture of a beach house, world travel, a life without any pressure, a life where they could just be. Sounds perfect, right? But Kayla pulled her hand away. And for a split second, she saw it. The mask fell. Derek's jaw went tight, and this flash of pure anger crossed his face before that fake smile clicked back into place. And across the table, her brother Austin, who'd been a total zombie, finally spoke up. his eyes just drilling into her, watching her every reaction. I know a little about Austin. When their dad died 4 years back, Kayla got the vineyard. Austin got a check for $500,000, which he torched in less than 2 years. The guy was in deep, so he jumps in, his voice all pushy, backing Derek up. He told Kayla she was in over her head, that she'd lose the whole place anyway. But she didn't flinch. Her voice was steady when she told them both, no, she wasn't selling. That's when Austin's eyes just went cold and he hissed, loyal to what? A dead man? That was the kill shot. The moment it all broke. Kayla felt the air get sucked out of the room. She mumbled something about needing to breathe and just ran. Derek called after her, his voice oozing that fake concern. But she was already gone. The back parking lot was dark, just one streetlight flickering like it was about to die. She always parked away from the lights, thought it was safer. Not that night. She froze. Every single nerve in her body was screaming. Someone was back there, watching her. A man was standing there, deep in the shadows. She spun around, but saw nothing but moonlight on steel. Then she saw him, a tall guy in a jean jacket, standing at the edge of the light, completely still, just watching. She tried to yell something, tried to find a strength she didn't have, but there was only silence. She started backing toward her car, keys clutched in her fist. Then he moved, took a single step into the light, and her heart just seized up. She turned and ran, fumbling with the door handle, finally yanking it open. But a man's low voice cut through the night. Wait. He stopped a few feet away, his hands up like he was surrendering. In that awful, blinking light, she finally saw his face. He was older, maybe late 60s, with these tired eyes that were just burning with a kind of desperate intensity. He told her his name was Michael, that he wasn't going to hurt her. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, polished wooden box. He said he had something for her. Terrified, she told him she didn't know him. And he just said, I know, but I know your husband, and I know what he's planning. And then Michael said the 9 words that blew her entire universe apart. Your husband is planning to kill you. I mean, just try to imagine hearing that. Your life, your marriage, everything you thought was real, just shattering on the asphalt of a dark parking lot. She told him he was crazy, but her voice was shaking, giving her away. Michael just held out the box, told her to open it when she was safe, and to trust no one. Not Derek, not even her brother. Before she could react, he put the box on the roof of her car and just melted back into the shadows. She grabbed it, threw herself inside, locked the doors, and just peeled out, her hands shaking so hard she could barely steer. She didn't dare look at the box. She just drove, her eyes glued to the rearview mirror. And then she saw them. Headlights, a black sedan stuck to her like glue, matching every turn. She floored it. So did they. She wrenched the wheel, flying down some dark gravel road, the sedan right on her bumper. After what felt like an eternity of panicked turns, she looked again. It was gone, but Michael's words were seared into her mind. Your husband is planning to kill you. By the time she fishtailed into their driveway, she was a wreck. The house was dark, and for the first time ever, it didn't feel safe. It felt like a trap. She sprinted inside, slammed the door, shot the deadbolt, and just gasped for air. Then, in this desperate attempt to push back the fear, she ran through the house, turning on every single light. But I think she was starting to realize the real darkness wasn't something you could fight with a light switch. It had been living with her all along. She finally collapsed at the kitchen table, staring at that little wooden box. It was a beautiful thing, walnut, and carved on the lid were the words, "Truth will prevail. 2024. With a shaky hand, she opened it. Inside were three things: a simple gold wedding band, a tiny micro SD card, and a single folded piece of paper. It was the wreckage of a life she was just discovering she'd never actually known. And she knew, deep in her gut, it was everything she needed to expose the truth about Derek. My friend, Derek. It was the wedding band that hit her the hardest. It was Derek's, the one he made a big show of never taking off. She picked it up. It felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. As she turned it over, her thumb found the inscription, "Forever, K and D." And then she felt it, a tiny, almost invisible seam on the inside. She pressed it, and the ring twisted open. It was a goddamn trick ring, a locket, designed to hold the darkest secrets of their marriage. Tucked inside was the SD card, and beneath it, the note. Her hands were trembling so badly she could barely unfold the paper. The letter was from Michael, the man from the parking lot, and the first line was another explosion. It said, "Dear Kayla, my name is Michael. I am Derek's father." He explained that 35 years ago, he'd walked out on them. For the last 3 years, trying to atone for his sins, he'd been working at her vineyard, just to be close to the son who had no idea he was there. Not as a father, but as a ghost, a handyman his own son never even saw. The story Michael laid out in that letter, it started with a father clinging to the hope that his son was a good man. He thought Derek was finally getting it together, but on September 23rd, 2022, that hope was executed. Michael was working late, fixing an irrigation pump, when he heard screams from the wine cellar. He crept down and hid behind some barrels. He saw his son, Derek, and his buddy Austin backing a young worker, a kid named Ryan Miller, into a corner. Ryan was on his knees, begging for his life, sobbing about his wife and new baby girl. And then Derek, my friend Derek, just raised a crowbar and brought it down, twice. Michael recorded it all on his phone, but he was frozen, paralyzed. That was his son. How do you send your own child to prison for the rest of his life? For 2 years, man, Derek's dad, Robert, just tortured himself. He held on to this tiny, insane hope that his son, my best friend Derek, wasn't some kind of monster. He convinced himself maybe it was Austin, their so-called friend, who was the real cancer. Robert turned his own home into a spy den, bugging rooms, taking pictures, searching for anything that would make Derek look like a victim, anything to keep him out of prison. But that all came crashing down 3 months ago. Robert heard Derek on the phone with Austin, calmly planning to murder his wife, Kayla. "I'll do it," Derek said, his voice just dead inside. "A car accident. It'll be clean. Then I get everything. 8.5 million from the vineyard. Another 3 mil from her life insurance. Plenty to pay you and start fresh with Megan." In that moment, Robert told me Derek wasn't his son anymore. He was something else. And his dad knew he couldn't save him. But he could still save Kayla. His dad's letter ended with this line that just guts you. "I will not fail as a human being. Ryan Miller's daughter is growing up without a father because of my son. I will not let another person die." He begged her to call an FBI agent, Agent Evans, even gave her the number 415-555-0147. "Give her the SD card," he wrote. "You have to testify. You have to live." Kayla must have read that letter 3 times before it even registered. Robert, Derek's own father. Her husband wasn't just cheating on her. He was a murderer. a guy who had already killed someone, and she was supposed to be the next one. She had to grab the kitchen counter just to stay on her feet. Her whole world just vaporized in an instant. She told Derek later she had to fight not to throw up right there. Once her legs could actually hold her, she went back for that SD card. Her laptop was open and she sat down, her hand shaking so bad she could barely get the card in the slot. A folder popped up named For Kayla. Inside, there were dozens of files. She checked the details: 47 audio recordings, 89 photos, and 12 videos. It was this perfectly organized archive of her husband's secret, monstrous life. A part of her just wanted to throw the damn laptop against the wall, to just wake up from the nightmare. But she couldn't. Her finger hovered over the mouse for what felt like forever before she finally clicked on the first video from just a month ago. But here's the twist, the part that messes with your head. That whole story, it was a lie, because Derek got a package too, a letter, an SD card. Exactly like Kayla. And the first thing he saw was a video from a hidden cam in some dingy office. And there was his wife, Kayla, talking to Austin, their best friend. The audio was crap, but their words cut through like glass. Austin says, "The contact is set, 200 million, Thursday, October 19th, Oakland Port, Pier 47. And Kayla, she just gives this slow, icy nod, not a flicker of emotion. Good. But Derek's getting suspicious. He saw the truck. If he looks into it, Austin's reply was instant, and it just freezes your blood. Then we deal with him the same way we dealt with Ryan. Kayla agrees without batting an eye. A car wreck, Highway 29, mile marker 52. I'll cut the brake line Wednesday night. He'll be dead by Friday. And then the screen went black, leaving Derek staring at his own ghost white face. He told me it felt like his soul was literally yanked out of his chest. The woman he slept next to every night was planning his murder, not in some vague future, this week, in 2 days. His hand was trembling so hard he could barely click the next file. This one was a video of Sam, one of the oldest guys at the vineyard, a man Derek had known his whole life. He was hunched over under a bare light bulb, whispering frantically into the camera. "Derek, if you're seeing this, you got my letter. I know this is crazy, but you are out of time. Tonight, at exactly 11:47 p.m., you have to get down to the wine cellar. The security system has a 3-minute blind spot when it cycles. That's your only chance. Your only one. Get to row 7. Find bottle 217, a 1996 Chateau Margaux. Twist it clockwise," Sam's voice begged from the screen. 3 full turns. You'll understand. He explained that Kayla and Austin were using the family business for something awful, and the evidence was hidden down there. "You have to trust Agent Evans. I put her number in the letter. She will keep you safe." "I'm so sorry, Derek. For the love of God, just get out of there alive." The screen went dead. Derek glanced at the time on his laptop. 11:32 p.m. He had 15 minutes. His heart felt like it was going to break through his ribs. There was no time to process, no time to call the cops with this insane story. If Sam was telling the truth, this was his only shot. He had to go, right now. He grabbed his phone and bolted for the cellar. 11:47 p.m. He had 180 seconds to find that row before the cameras kicked back in. The cellar was like a freezer, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and aging wine. He gripped the cold iron handrail, his footsteps cracking like gunshots on the stone stairs as he sliced through the gloom with his phone's flashlight. The single weak bulb overhead barely made a dent in the darkness, showing him this endless maze of wine racks. His own grandfather had built this place with his bare hands. Now, Derek told me, it felt like he was walking down into his own grave. He forced his legs to move. Row 7, bottle 217. The place was massive, just suffocatingly huge, with thousands of bottles on every wall. He ran, trying to read the tiny, faded labels, his breath clouding in the freezing air. Row 1, 2, 3, 11:48 p.m. He thought his heart was literally going to explode. He had 120 seconds left. Row 4, 5, 6. And then he saw it. Row 7. The flashlight beam was shaking as he scanned the bottles, his hands trembling too much to even read properly. 215, 216. There. Bottle 217. A 1996 Chateau Margaux, 11:49 p.m. He had 60 seconds. The label was old and peeling, the bottle caked in dust. He remembered what Sam said. Turn it clockwise. 3 full rotations. He put his hand around the neck of the bottle and twisted. It moved, but it felt wrong. There was this weird mechanical grinding noise. It wasn't glass on wood, it was machinery. He gave it a second turn. The grinding was louder, and he heard a faint click from deep inside the wall. A third turn. A loud, heavy thud echoed through the cellar, and he jumped back, his heart in his throat. For a second, nothing. And then, a section of the stone wall behind the rack began to groan and slide sideways. He just stood there, completely floored, as a hidden door disguised as the cellar wall scraped open, revealing a narrow, pitch-black hallway. A blast of cold air hit him, carrying this sharp, chemical smell that burned his nostrils. He raised his phone, pushing the light into the suffocating dark. The tunnel was small, maybe 3 feet wide, lined with old, crumbling brick. He knew what it was from his grandpa's stories. A prohibition tunnel. The old bootleggers had dug them all over these hills back in the 1920s. But why in God's name was there one on his family's property? Every nerve in his body was screaming at him to turn around and run, but he just kept hearing Sam's terrified voice in his head. He checked the time, 11:50 p.m. The cameras were back online. He could hear the quiet, high-pitched whine of the system restarting. It didn't matter. They couldn't see him now. He was invisible. He took a deep, shaky breath and stepped across the threshold into the darkness. The tunnel was claustrophobic as hell. The ceiling so low he had to duck his head, keeping a hand on the cold, wet brick wall to stay upright. The beam from his phone only cut through a few feet of the darkness ahead. That chemical smell got stronger, more biting with every step he took. A foul mix of what smelled like ink and some kind of industrial cleaner. He walked for what felt like maybe 50 feet, and the narrow tunnel suddenly opened into a gigantic cavern. He froze, sweeping his light around the space, and he said he literally forgot how to breathe. The chamber was massive, carved right out of the rock with a high, arched ceiling. But it wasn't the size of the room that turned his blood to ice. It was what was filling it. In the center of the cavern sat this absolute monster of a machine, an industrial offset printing press, its steel frame shining in his flashlight beam. This wasn't some little workshop setup. This was the kind of press governments use. Next to it were huge pallets of special paper. A cotton linen blend, he realized, as a wave of nausea hit him. The exact kind of paper the U.S. Treasury uses for money. And then his light found them. Pallet after pallet, stacked high with shrink-wrapped bricks of cash. Hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, of flawless counterfeit $100 bills. I'll never forget the night my best friend Derek fell apart. He told me the whole story, and man, it's the kind of thing that makes you wonder if you really know anyone at all. He said the second he understood what his wife, Kayla, had done, his entire reality just imploded. She was running a massive, professional counterfeiting ring from a hidden cellar right under their house. He told me his legs went weak as he stumbled over to this old metal desk. He flipped open a dusty ledger, his own heartbeat roaring in his ears, and saw it all. Every transaction, logged with insane detail, dates, amounts, drop points. It was Kayla's handwriting, that neat cursive he knew so well, and a name. Over and over. Hayes. Then, at the top of the last page, in big, sharp letters, Connor Hayes. The total so far, $47 million in 3 years. But the next line was a new order, $200 million, shipping from Oakland in just 4 days. His hands were shaking too hard to even dial. Not that he had service down there anyway, but the camera worked. He had to get proof. So he just started taking pictures of everything, a complete blur of panic. The huge printing press, the sheets of uncut bills, the pallets of cash wrapped in plastic, and every single page of that damn book. He knew the photos would probably be shaky and useless, but he couldn't stop himself. It was a desperate need to document this nightmare he'd walked into. And then he heard it. Footsteps. He froze, his thumbs still on the screen. The sound was distant at first, echoing from deeper in the tunnels, not from the way he'd come. There was another way in. Then he heard voices, low and muffled, but getting closer. Pure, ice-cold terror washed over him. He shoved his phone in his pocket and spun around, his flashlight beam dancing wildly on the damp walls. There was nowhere to run. He was absolutely trapped. He searched frantically for a place to hide, a shadow, a space behind some boxes. Then a voice sliced through the dark and stopped his heart. A voice he knew better than his own. It was Kayla. It was his wife. She was saying, "I'm telling you, he's been asking too many questions. If he ever finds this place." Then a man's voice answered, "Just relax," the guy said. "He's probably upstairs, sound asleep. You're getting paranoid." "I'm not paranoid," Kayla shot back, her voice like steel. "I'm being careful." They were so close now, maybe 20 feet away. Derek's eyes darted around and found an air duct grate high on the wall. It was small and rusty, but it was open just a crack. It was his only chance. He stopped thinking and just moved. There was a big wooden shipping crate nearby. He dragged the crate across the floor toward the wall, the scraping sound echoing like a gunshot in the dead quiet. He flinched, sure they'd heard, then scrambled on top. The vent was still just out of reach. He had to jump, his fingers barely snagging the sharp metal edge. With his arms screaming, he pulled himself up and forced his body through the narrow opening. The duct was pitch black and freezing. He crawled a few feet in, just far enough to be hidden, and pressed himself flat against the cold metal. Below him, the voices grew louder as Kayla and a man, who he now recognized as their neighbor Austin, stepped into the room. Derek held his breath, trying to become invisible, and peered down through the slats of the grate. Kayla stood there, hands on her hips, surveying the room like a queen. Austin walked straight to the desk and started flipping through the same ledger Derek had been photographing just moments before. A single bare bulb hung from a wire overhead, casting long, warped shadows on their faces. Derek didn't dare breathe. The duct was painfully tight, the cold steel just leaching the warmth from his body. His phone, with all the evidence, felt like a block of ice against his leg. He was terrified they'd look up, see the moved crate, but they were completely engrossed in the book. "Everything is proceeding on schedule," Austin said, shutting the ledger with a sharp clap that bounced off the stone. "Hayes called an hour ago. The buyers are all confirmed." It all came down to those words, spoken in the dark of a place that shouldn't exist. 200 million, Thursday night, Oakland Port. That's what Derek heard Austin say. And Kayla, the woman he loved, the woman he shared a life with, just nodded. "Good," she said, her voice completely empty of emotion. "We're cutting it close, but we'll make it." When Austin asked how they were getting it out, she was all business. "Victor's coordinating," she told him. "Container leaves at midnight Friday. It'll be halfway to St. Petersburg before anyone notices." And that's when it shattered him, hiding in the dark above them. Russia. This wasn't just some crime, this was global. And then Austin asked the one question that made Derek's blood run cold. "And Derek?" Kayla's whole face hardened. "He's a problem. I told you he'd refuse to sell the vineyard." "I know," Austin said, but Kayla's voice went sharp, laced with a chilling fury. "I thought I could convince him," she spat. "I thought if I just played the loving, concerned wife long enough, he'd fold. But he's stubborn, just like his father was." Austin just scoffed. Daniel was a pain in the ass, too. At least he had the decency to die before he could find this place. Derek told me he had to bite his own tongue to stop from screaming. They were talking about his dad, Daniel, his hero, like he was just some nuisance that got cleared away. "Derek's not going to sell," Kayla said, pacing, "which means we move to plan B." Austin's casual tone vanished. "You sure? That's a big step." "It's the only step," she snapped, whirling to face him. "We can't afford to wait. If he starts digging, if he talks to the wrong people, this entire operation crumbles. Logan won't think twice about killing us both. You know that." Derek heard Austin go silent for a moment. Then he asked, "What do you want to do?" Kayla didn't respond right away. She walked to a pallet stacked with cash and stroked the plastic wrap like a pet. "The same thing we did with Michael Peterson." That name just hung there in the cold air, sending a shiver through Derek's whole body. Austin shifted his weight, suddenly uneasy. "Kayla, you remember?" Her voice was eerily calm, like she was telling a bedtime story. September 2022. Michael was working late, restocking the main cellar. He saw someone come down here. He followed them. He found the press. "I remember," Austin whispered. Kayla turned to look right at him, her eyes completely vacant. "He was going to call the cops, so I hit him, twice, with that crowbar we use for the crates." She made a small, horrifying motion with her arm, miming the swing. "First hit, he went down. Second hit, he stopped moving." Derek clamped a hand over his mouth, the sour taste of terror rising in his throat. "Detective Hayes buried it as a workplace accident," Kayla continued, her tone as casual as if she were talking about the weather. "Ruled it a fall, no autopsy. Case closed in 48 hours. Logan paid him $87,000 to make sure of it." Austin rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous habit of his. "And you want to do the same thing with Derek?" "Not the same," she corrected him. "Different method." She pulled out her phone. "Tomorrow night, 8 p.m., I'll tell him I need to talk, that I want to apologize for pushing him about the vineyard. I'll suggest we go for a drive. Just us." The entire plan was laid out with this sickening, cold-blooded precision. "We'll take Highway 29 north to mile marker 52. There's a sharp curve there, a steep drop-off. Brake failure. Austin guessed, his voice thin. Exactly, Kayla confirmed, a faint smile on her lips. I'll cut the brake line before we leave. By the time we hit that curve, he won't be able to stop. The car goes over the edge. He'll be dead before they find him. And I'll be the grieving widow who barely survived. Austin just stared at her. You've really thought this all through. I've had 2 years to think about it, she said, her voice chillingly soft. Kayla put her phone back into her pocket. Ever since Michael, I knew Derek would become a problem. I just didn't think it would happen this soon. After he's gone, I get everything. The vineyard, the house, the $3 million life insurance policy. I sell this place to Logan's shell company, get a $2 million kickback, and I disappear. Costa Rica, maybe. Austin stood there for a second. What about Ashley? A slow, cruel smile crept across Kayla's face. Ashley comes with me. She's already filed for divorce from her husband. By the time Derek's funeral is over, we'll be on a beach somewhere. Derek's world was just spinning out of control. He couldn't breathe. The tiny duct felt like it was closing in on him, like a coffin. Kayla glanced down at her watch. She just looks at him and says, "Come on, we have to get upstairs before anyone knows we're gone." My buddy Jake, he just nodded, numb. He told me they walked across this massive room to a second tunnel he hadn't even spotted. Brittany flips a switch, and the whole world just vanishes into pure black. He heard this heavy metal door slam shut, and the silence that followed was so complete, he said it felt like it was physically crushing him. He was wedged in that vent, totally paralyzed, his heart trying to punch its way out of his chest. He told me he counted to 60, then did it all over again, every single muscle in his body just screaming. He was just vibrating with raw fear. Only when he was dead, certain they were gone, did he slowly, so carefully, start to move, dropping onto a crate below with a soft thud. The second his boots hit the floor, his knees just gave out. He had to slam his hand against a wooden box just to keep from collapsing, his whole body shaking in that cold, black space. He told me he fumbled for his phone, and the flashlight beam was like a panicked heartbeat slicing through the darkness as he just ran for his life. That tunnel, man. He said it felt like it was trying to swallow him, shadows leaping out at him from every corner. He fell, hard, twice, his lungs burning. When he finally burst back into the wine cellar, he slammed the hidden door shut, hearing these old gears grind behind it. But he didn't stop. He flew up the stairs, tore through the kitchen, and didn't stop running until he was in his own bedroom, throwing the bolt and just sliding down the door to the floor. He's still clutching his phone, he told me, the screen lighting up his face in this awful, ghostly way. And then it all hit him at once. His wife was going to have him killed tomorrow at 8 p.m. He had less than 24 hours to live. His fingers were shaking so bad he could barely even think about looking through his contacts. He remembered a letter his Uncle Ben had left him, saying if he ever got into the kind of trouble you don't just walk away from, he needed to call FBI agent Miller. The number was just seared into his memory. 415-555-147. He just stared at it, his thumb hovering over the call button. It was 1 a.m. Was anyone even going to pick up? Would they just dismiss him as some paranoid husband? But what choice did he have? He knew in his bones Brittany had killed before. He was next. He had to make the call. And this was it, man. This was that one single moment where everything teetered on a knife's edge. He knew with absolute certainty his wife was planning to murder him. And if he didn't find the courage to hit that button, he wouldn't see another sunrise. He told me he sucked in this ragged breath and pressed send. The phone rang once, then a second time. His hand was shaking so violently he almost dropped the phone. He was still just a heap on the floor, locked in his own bedroom, the screen illuminating his terrified face. The old house groaned around him, a sound that used to feel like home, but now sounded like a threat. 3 rings. What if the number was disconnected? Then, a click. Agent Miller. The voice was professional, calm, and thank God wide awake. It was a woman's voice, and it had this authority that just cut straight through his panic. It was the voice of someone who's heard it all and knows what to do. Jake told me he opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The words were just strangled by pure terror. "Hello?" Agent Miller said again. "Is anyone there?" He finally managed to get the words out, just this broken whisper. "My name is Jake, my Uncle Ben. He told me to call you. My wife is going to kill me." There was this brief, heavy pause on the line, and then she said the 6 words that changed everything. "Mr. Peterson, we've been waiting for your call." The relief that washed over him was like a tidal wave. It nearly knocked the air out of him. He wasn't crazy. It was real. And they believed him. Agent Miller's voice was steady, but Jake said he could hear a new urgency in it. "Your uncle provided some intel about your wife's associates. We've had Brittany and her organization under light surveillance, but we never had anything concrete. We needed someone on the inside." Jake's voice was cracking as he told her everything he overheard. "It's happening tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, Highway 29, mile marker 52. She's having someone cut the brake line. She wants it to look like an accident." "How certain are you of these details?" Miller asked, her voice sharp. And then the entire story just poured out of him. The months of suspicion, finding the hidden door in the wine cellar, the tunnel, the enormous underground counterfeiting operation, and all the cash. And then he told her about hiding in that grimy air duct, listening to Brittany, his own wife, and her partner Connor, plan his murder like they were deciding where to get lunch. Agent Miller just listened, not interrupting once. All Jake could hear on her end was the faint, rapid tapping of a keyboard, the sound of his own death being entered into a federal case file. When he finally finished, just gasping for air, the line went quiet for a moment. "Mr. Peterson," she said, "you've given us exactly what we need. Did you see anything else down there? Any documents?" "Yes," Jake whispered, remembering a book on a desk. "I saw a ledger. It had a name written inside. Logan." "Good. Do not go back there. Do not let her suspect you know anything. You need to act completely normal. We will handle it from here." Act normal. He told me they were the 2 most impossible words he'd ever heard in his life. He was just sitting on his bedroom floor, back pressed against the locked door, trying to get his head around it. How the hell was he supposed to act normal? How was he supposed to leave that room, walk downstairs, and look the woman he married in the eyes? How could he possibly make coffee and chat about their day, knowing she had his execution scheduled for 8 p.m. on the dot? Every single second he was in that house felt like a Russian roulette chamber spinning. He was a dead man walking, and the only thing keeping him breathing was a promise from a voice on the phone. The agent's orders were so simple, but they felt like a death sentence. Just get through the day. He didn't sleep. Not for a minute. He just sat there in the dark, listening. Every creak of that old house was her coming for him. Every rattle of the windows was Connor, her buddy, showing up to get the job done early. The moon cut these long, bony shadows across the floor, and his mind just went to the darkest places. He could see her standing right outside his door, her ear pressed to the wood. He could picture her holding a knife, quietly testing the knob. He was a prisoner in his own house, trapped just down the hall from the woman who was planning his end. He prayed for the sun to come up, but at the same time, he dreaded it, because sunrise just meant the clock was ticking down to Highway 29. The agents laid it all out for him the next morning. They told him that his testimony about what he heard was a huge deal, but that the case against Brittany and her whole crew would be 100 times stronger with physical evidence. An agent, Miller's partner, put it to him straight. Without concrete proof from that lab, this could all turn into a he said, she said nightmare. He told Jake, "You are the linchpin here. That ledger you saw is what makes this whole thing stick." I can't even imagine the pressure he was under. Hearing that his life depended on him, doing the one thing he never wanted to do again. He had to go back down there. He barely whispered, "I'll do it." The agent told him to wait for their signal, and then added, "I know this is terrifying, but you're doing the right thing. I promise you, we will have your back." Jake told me he had to believe him. It was all he had. The agent told him to try and act normal until they gave the signal. An impossible order, right? Jake said. He just stood there in his room after the call, his phone still pressed to his ear. How do you act normal when you know the woman sleeping down the hall, your wife, is dreaming about how to make you disappear? He said he finally got dressed, his hands shaking, pulling on his work clothes like they were a suit of armor. The only light was from his alarm clock, 6:14 in the morning. He just stared into the hallway, and every single groan from the house, every whistle of wind, sounded like her footsteps coming to check on him. He had to go downstairs and face her. Agent Miller's voice was just on a loop in his head. "We'll have eyes on you. Unmarked cars. You won't see us, but we'll be there. Just play your part." He had to hang on to that. He had to believe that, just beyond the trees, there was a team of agents ready to move. He told me that when he went to leave for work, every step, every word, felt like it was from a script. He kissed Brittany goodbye at the door, and he said the feeling of her lips on his cheek felt like being burned with a cattle brand. It took every single ounce of his willpower not to recoil, not to just turn and run screaming out of that house forever. I'll never forget what he told me about that morning. Derek was standing there on his own porch, keys in his hand, looking back at the woman he thought he knew. She was just framed in the doorway, he said, waving with this completely normal, sweet smile. And he's just thinking, was any of it real? Was the Kayla he married ever even there? Or was she just a character she played? He got into his car, the same one she'd set up to be his casket, and the engine just started. A perfectly ordinary sound. For that moment, the brakes worked. All he could do was drive, act like nothing was wrong, and just pray he'd make it through the day. For my best friend, Derek, it was just another night, you know? He had no clue that as he was sleeping, his entire life had already imploded. His wife, Kayla, hadn't slept at all. He found out later she was up by 7 a.m., bags packed, her hands trembling while she shoved some little SD card into her purse. She was trying to convince herself that the black car she'd seen was just a coincidence. But she knew. She knew Derek was on to her. She snuck out the back, avoiding their bedroom window, got into her car, locked the doors, and just peeled out, leaving everything behind. That drive to San Francisco, which should have been like an hour and a half, must have felt like an eternity. Every car that pulled up behind her, she thought it was one of Derek's guys. Every pair of headlights felt like they were hunting her. But the black sedan she was paranoid about never appeared. By the time she got to a parking garage near the FBI headquarters, her hands were cramping from how hard she was gripping the wheel. The building was this concrete monster. She walks up to a security desk, and some cop with a face like a rock takes her ID and makes a call. "Mrs. Miller," he says with zero emotion. "Someone will be right down." She stood there in this dead, quiet lobby, her heart hammering until an elevator chimed. And out walks this woman, Agent Reed, who was the spitting image of a Fed. Late 40s, serious haircut, and eyes that looked like they could see right through you. She wore a dark blazer, FBI badge clipped to her belt. "Mrs. Miller," she said, her handshake firm. "All business? Thank you for coming." Kayla could only nod. She was that scared. Agent Reed took her to the fourth floor, down this long hallway of identical doors and into a conference room. A guy was already there, typing on a laptop. "This is Agent Cross," Reed told her, shutting the door behind them. "He's our lead technical analyst." Cross looked up, maybe early 40s with some gray in his hair. And Derek told me, when he heard this part, he could just imagine the look on the guy's face. A little bit of pity when he said, "Mrs. Miller, we're truly sorry you've been put in this situation." Kayla had no idea how to respond, so she just took a seat. Agent Reed cut right to the chase. "I know this is overwhelming, Kayla, but I need you to tell us everything. Start from the beginning. Tell us about the box." And man, she did. She told them about her brother, Liam, showing up out of the blue with this simple wooden box. Inside was an old ring and a tiny memory card, the thing that blew Derek's whole other life wide open. She talked about finding the secret wine cellar and seeing a full-on counterfeiting setup. $47 million in fake bills. Then her voice broke when she told them about hiding in the air duct, listening to Derek and his partner Cody, calmly planning to have her killed. When Kayla finished her story, Agent Cross and Agent Reed just exchanged this heavy look. "This is it," Reed said softly. She took the SD card from Kayla and slid it into Cross's laptop. "It's the final piece we were missing." A folder appeared on the screen. Agent Cross's eyes flew across the files. 47 audio clips, 89 photos, 12 videos. He looked up at Reed. "We have enough to indict Cody Clark for first-degree murder, counterfeiting, conspiracy. The whole 9 yards. Reed turned back to Kayla. "You've given us the evidence, but we still need you. You're the one who saw the operation. You heard Cody admit to killing Michael Torres." Kayla just swallowed, her throat tight. "So, what happens now?" And right then, her phone buzzed on the conference table. It was a text from a number she hadn't seen in ages. Her half-sister, Madison. The message sent a chill down her spine. "I need to talk to you about Cody. I can't keep this secret anymore." Agent Reed's gaze sharpened instantly. "Who is that from?" "My sister," Kayla whispered. "Madison." Reed leaned over to read the message. "Does she have any idea what Cody and Derek are planning?" I I don't know. We haven't really talked since our dad passed away." Agent Reed was already moving. "Call her. Tell her to meet us right now." "Meet where?" "We're sending a car for her. Tell her to wait at her apartment, and do not say anything else over the phone." Kayla's fingers were shaking as she typed back, "Where are you? The FBI needs to speak with you." He told me Kayla described watching those three little dots, the ones that mean someone's typing, and it felt like it took a whole hour. Then the reply finally came. "I'm at home. Please, Kayla, I'm so terrified." Agent Reed was already on her own phone, snapping out orders. "Dispatch a unit to Madison's address immediately. I want her taken to the Napa safe house. No lights, no sirens." She hung up and looked straight at Kayla. "We're moving you both. If your sister knows something, we have to hear it before Derek figures out his entire world is on fire." A few hours later, they were in some nondescript house in Napa, surrounded by vineyards. Beige everything, boring furniture, and the curtains pulled shut. That's when they saw headlights sweep across the window, and Madison practically fell out of the car that pulled up. When she stepped inside, Kayla barely recognized her. Her own sister looked completely hollowed out. She was pale, with tear stains on her cheeks and these raw, empty eyes. Her clothes seemed way too big for her. "Kayla," she whispered, and it sounded like just saying the name hurt. Kayla was just stunned into silence. Agent Reed pointed to the kitchen table. "Miss Miller, please take a seat." Madison sat, her hands twisting in her lap. The silence in that room was suffocating until she finally shattered it. "I owe Derek money," she said, her voice cracking. $150,000? I took it back in 2021 for a business that went under." The tears just started pouring down her face. "He threatened me. He said if I didn't pay it back, he'd turn me into the IRS. I committed bank fraud on my loan application," she confessed, the words tumbling out of her. "It's a federal offense. He told me I'd face 5 years in prison." Agent Reed's expression was unreadable, just pure stone. "And he forced me to spy on you," Madison said, finally meeting her sister's eyes. "For 2 years. I had to report your schedule, who you spoke with, everything. He needed to know every single move you made. I swear I never wanted to, Kayla. I was just so scared." Reed's voice was sharp when she cut in. "Last night, did you have contact with Derek?" Madison nodded, wiping at her eyes. "He called me at midnight. He said, 'Tomorrow night, 8 p.m., Highway 29, car accident. Keep your mouth shut, or you're going to prison right alongside me.'" Her gaze locked with Kayla's. I knew exactly what he was saying. "He was going to have you killed," Madison sobbed. "And if I tried to warn you, he was going to destroy my life." You could have heard a pin drop in that room, just Madison's choked breathing. Agent Reed leaned forward. "Miss Miller, you've just confessed to bank fraud, tax evasion, and obstruction of justice. You're facing 10 to 15 years." Madison's face went ghost white, but Reed wasn't done. "However, if you give us your full cooperation, testify against Derek, provide all evidence, the U.S. Attorney is prepared to recommend a significantly reduced sentence, 6 years, with a possibility of parole after 4. Madison just looked at her, completely floored. 6 years? "You're still going to serve time," Reed said, not pulling any punches. "But you will also be the person who helps us bring down a monster and his entire criminal network. That has to be worth something." Madison turned to Kayla, her eyes pleading. "I am so, so sorry. I know you can't ever forgive me, but I had to tell someone. I couldn't let him kill you." Kayla didn't say anything. I mean, what could she say? Part of her had to be screaming at her sister for the betrayal, but another part just saw the truth. Madison was just one more person caught in the disaster that my friend Derek had created. Agent Reed slid a document across the table. This is a standard cooperation agreement. Review it, sign it, and then we need to retrieve that evidence from your apartment. With a hand that wouldn't stop shaking, Madison signed her name, sealing Derek's fate in a room that probably smelled like stale coffee and fear. Agent Evans and Agent Logan were standing by the door, ready to move. It was October 17th, around 11:30 in the morning, and their destination was Madison's apartment, the place holding the evidence that would lock Cody away for good. Kayla looked like a complete wreck. Her sister Madison was trying to absorb the absolute insanity of the last 12 hours. Cody's murder plot, his confession, the counterfeit money operation happening right under her sister's nose, and now this, her being blackmailed by Derek. Ready? Evans asked Madison. She just gave this tiny, defeated nod. Yeah, she whispered. Let's get this over with. They took off in two separate cars. Evans drove the unmarked sedan with Madison and Kayla in it, while Logan followed behind them. The drive to Madison's apartment was this tense 20-minute silence. She lived on the edge of downtown Napa in a rundown two-bedroom place that was screaming for a renovation. The paint outside was peeling, and the parking lot was just a mess of cracked concrete. Madison unlocked her front door and led them into a place that just felt sad. It was tidy, but it had the personality of a doctor's waiting room, not a home. Cheap furniture, generic posters, and a laptop on the kitchen counter. The files are in my bedroom, Madison said, her voice totally flat as she led them down a short hallway. Her room was so empty, man. Just a bed against the wall and one of those ugly metal filing cabinets. He told me he watched Kayla get on her knees, her fingers just trembling as she dug through folders. It's here, she breathed, and her voice cracked as she handed this thick folder to Agent Miller. He opened it up, spreading the papers all over the bed. Agent Reed immediately started taking pictures of every page with his phone while setting up a little scanner. The first thing they saw was the loan agreement, dated March 15th, 2021. Kayla's signature was right there next to Austin's. $150,000 at 8% interest a year. The whole nightmare was supposed to be over by March 15th, 2024. Chloe, her sister, just stared at it, and you could see the sickness rising in her. Austin gave her the money, all of it dirty, which she only found out later, knowing exactly the kind of chain he was wrapping around her neck. Why so much? Chloe asked, the words just falling out of her. Kayla couldn't even look at her. I wanted to start my own real estate company, she said. I really thought I could do it. I had a whole plan, clients ready to go. But then the market tanked in 2022, and it took everything. Miller then held up this handwritten ledger. In 2 years, Kayla had managed to pay back $30,000 in 5 payments. She was still under the thumb for $120,000. That's a hell of a number, Reed said as he scanned it. I know, Kayla whispered. I tried. I was working 2 jobs, but he just kept making up new fees. It was never going to be enough. The next set of papers made my friend's blood run cold. 37 printed emails from Austin's private account. Just this relentless stream of threats from January of 2022 to September of 2024. Miller handed the first one to Chloe, who forced herself to read it. Kayla, you're 3 months behind. Pay up by March, or I report your tax fraud. You lied on your 2021 return. That's a federal offense. You're looking at 5 years in prison minimum. Don't play games with me. Her hands were shaking so bad she could barely hold the paper. He said they were all just like that, cold, cruel, and a constant, terrifying reminder that Austin could blow up her entire life on a whim. He did this to you for 2 years, Chloe said, her voice just a broken whisper. Kayla finally met her sister's eyes, fresh tears streaming down her face. I didn't know what else to do, Chloe. I couldn't go to the police. I just kept telling myself if I paid him, he'd go away. But he never did. Reed finished scanning and closed his laptop. This is open and shut, he told Miller. It's coercion, textbook extortion, pure blackmail. He went after her when she was at her lowest. Miller nodded, her face like stone. Kayla, you are the victim here, but you were also an accessory. By not coming forward, you allowed him to keep doing this. You kept quiet about crimes that could have been stopped. But the fact that you're cooperating now is going to count for a lot with the court. Signing that agreement will work in your favor. Kayla just wiped at her face. I know I should have said something. I was just so terrified. I still am. Miller laid the official cooperation agreement on the bed. This document says you agree to testify against Austin. For that, the prosecution will recommend you get a reduced sentence. Do you understand what that means? Yes, Kayla said, her voice barely there. Sign on this line. She took the pen, and as she wrote her name, Derek told me her hand was perfectly steady. Look, I've heard a lot of messed up stories, but this one gets to you. It's about my best friend Derek and how he had to watch the life he built with his wife Kayla get systematically destroyed. He told me the whole thing finally cracked open in this tiny apartment. He was just standing there in the doorway, watching Kayla completely shatter in front of her sister, Chloe. Chloe was on the floor, practically begging Kayla to finally admit what Derek had been trying to tell her for months. That's when Kayla whispered, I'm so sorry. Chloe looked up, totally floored. I'm the one who, Kayla began, but her sister cut her off. I know, Chloe said, her voice all choked up. But I should have seen something. The room went dead silent. Then Kayla, her face just a wreck, slowly shook her head. You never would have seen it, she told Chloe. Austin made damn sure of that. Austin, the guy who built this entire house of horrors. While Kayla was breaking down, my buddy Derek was with an FBI agent, packing box after box of evidence from her apartment. He told me that right before they left, he looked back at his wife, and she just looked hollow, like the weight of Austin's lies had finally carved out everything inside her. He wanted to tell her it would all be okay, but the words just wouldn't come. I mean, what do you even say to that? How do you fix a betrayal that deep? They got to the FBI field office around 2 in the afternoon. Derek's head was just swimming, stuck on a loop of everything they'd found. The loan, the emails, a whole goddamn paper trail of Austin's sick, twisted war against Kayla. Agent Miller led Derek into the small, sterile conference room with a big TV on the wall. The other agent, Reed, was hooking up a laptop. We have someone joining us via video conference, Miller said, motioning for Derek to sit. His name is David Sterling. He was your father-in-law's attorney. Derek told me hearing that name was like a ghost walking into the room. He remembered David Sterling from the funeral, when Kayla's dad passed away back in 2020. A tall guy, maybe in his 60s, silver hair, had a kind smile. He was the one who walked Kayla through all the paperwork, who explained the will, or what they all thought was the will. Reed hit a few keys, and the screen flickered to life. David Sterling's face popped up. He was in some fancy New York City law office, looked like, with these huge bookshelves behind him. He was all business in a navy suit and glasses, his face serious. "Mr. Hayes," he said, giving Derek a crisp nod through the camera. "I'm relieved to know you are safe." Miller had obviously filled him in. "Mr. Sterling," Derek said, his voice tight, "I have no idea what is going on." The lawyer leaned closer to the camera, folding his hands on his desk. "I need to show you a document," he said. "A document your wife should have been shown 4 years ago. It concerns her father's will." Miller slid a bottle of water across the table to Derek. Derek took a huge gulp of water, trying to will his hands to stop shaking. Sterling continued. "In September of 2019, your father-in-law, Mr. Henderson, visited my office in New York. He was here to draft his final will and testament." The lawyer stressed how meticulous Mr. Henderson was, that his instructions were airtight. The thing was officially notarized by a Nancy Miller on September 1st, 2019. "I am holding the original copy right now," Sterling said, lifting a thick document into view for a second before setting it down to read. The will specifies that 60% of Ashford Vineyard, with a value of approximately $5.1 million, is bequeathed to his daughter, Kayla Henderson. 40%, valued at around $3.4 million, is to be donated to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Derek said those words just hung there in the silent room. He was just staring at the screen, his brain refusing to process it. St. Jude? He had to cut the lawyer off, his throat feeling like it was closing. That was wrong. That wasn't the will Kayla had been living by for the past 4 years. The lawyer, Mr. Sterling, let his professional mask slip into something that looked like genuine pity. "I am aware," he said softly. "The will that was presented to your wife in 2020 was a forgery." The floor just dropped out from under Derek. He told me he grabbed the edge of the table, his knuckles turning white. Sterling explained that Kayla's father wanted to honor his late wife, Leah, who he'd lost to cancer in 2015. St. Jude was where she'd gotten treatment. It was his final gift in her memory. Derek admitted his eyes were burning hearing that part. "Leah," he said, "was more of a mother to Kayla than her own had ever been. Her dad was trying to leave behind this beautiful legacy for her, and Kayla never even knew." "So what the hell happened?" Agent Miller's voice cut through the heavy silence. Sterling held a different document up to the camera. "This is the will that was actually submitted to the probate court," he said. "It is a near-perfect duplicate of the original, with one very significant alteration." Reed, the other agent, put both versions up side by side on the big screen. The dates were the same. The signatures looked identical, but the entire section about St. Jude Children's Research Hospital was just gone. In its place, 100% of the vineyard was left directly to Kayla. "Who did this?" Derek asked, and he could hear his own voice shaking. "Brenda Vance," Sterling replied, and Derek said the name hit him like a punch to the gut. She was the other lawyer on the case, the one who handled the probate process after Kayla's dad died. Sterling had been out of the country for a family matter. Brenda was supposed to be the backup executor. He had trusted her completely. "A mistake I regret more deeply than you could possibly know," he added. Miller leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "Tell me why removing the charity was so important." Sterling nodded, his face grim. "When a major foundation like St. Jude is named a beneficiary," he explained, They are legally obligated to conduct a full audit of the estate. I mean, a complete appraisal of all assets, a forensic look at the finances, everything. I swear, my heart broke for Austin when he told me this part. He was on a video call with this private investigator, Keller, who laid it all out. If St. Jude's had been allowed to audit that vineyard back in 2020, Keller said, our people would have found Derek's counterfeit wine operation in the cellar in less than 2 weeks. Guaranteed. Austin said he just felt the floor drop out from under him. The lawyer, Jessica, had committed a straight-up felony just to cover for that monster. Exactly, Keller told him. By faking the will to cut the hospital out, Jessica handed Kayla the entire property, no questions asked, no audit, no inspectors. And Derek's multi-million-dollar scam could just keep humming along in the dark. This company, run by some guy named Nikolai Petrov, was ready to buy. If Kayla had signed the papers, she would have walked away with $8.5 million. Derek would have pocketed a clean $2 million commission, and his whole criminal enterprise would have a new owner who was in on the whole thing. It was a perfect deal for everyone on the inside. Except for Kayla, of course, who would have been left holding the bag for a massive federal crime without even knowing it. But she said no, Austin just whispered into the phone. She wouldn't sell. Keller stared him down through the screen. And that, he said, is when Derek moved to Plan B. He'd kill her, make it look like an accident, inherit everything as the grieving husband, and sell the vineyard to Petrov himself. A much cleaner deal. No arguments and no loose ends. So that fake will... It was never just about hiding the cheap wine. It was a cold, calculated setup. It was designed to give Kayla total control, making it a hell of a lot easier for Derek to either force her into selling or, just get rid of her and take it all. That's right, Keller confirmed. Austin just felt this wave of sickness wash over him. Everything he and Kayla believed about her inheritance, about her dad's last wishes, was just a carefully constructed lie. This lawyer, Jessica Hayes, had literally stolen millions from a children's cancer hospital. She spat on the memory of Kayla's own mom, who died from that exact disease, all to protect a monster. What happens now? Austin asked, his voice barely there. And that's how we officially nail the counterfeit ring and prove Jessica forged the documents. The case is solid. Keller gave this one sharp nod. I'll forward you a PDF of the real will, he said. I've already spoken with St. Jude's legal team. They're ready to move. Thank you, Austin said, but the words just felt empty. Keller's face seemed to soften for a second. Your father-in-law loved his daughter, son. All he wanted was for her to be safe. I'm just so sorry I wasn't there to make sure that happened. And with that, the screen went black. Austin told me he just sat there, staring at nothing, until Agent Evans put a heavy hand on his shoulder. We're going to make this right, the agent promised him. Austin could only nod. He couldn't find the words. His brain was just stuck on this image of Kayla's dad, in that office 4 years ago, trying to honor his wife, and how Derek, the man who was supposed to love his daughter, had just torn that entire legacy to shreds. Another agent, Logan, shut his laptop. Austin, he said, I just got an update from forensics. They're set to exhume Daniel Peterson's body tomorrow morning. Agent Evans nodded. Good. Let's go. Austin made himself stand up, his legs feeling like jelly. This entire nightmare was just coming apart, piece by horrifying piece, and he had no idea if they could ever be whole again. Agent Evans and Austin walked into the ME's office around 4 in the afternoon. They were met by a Dr. Emma Larson, a tall woman with silver streaks in her hair and the kind of tired eyes that have seen the absolute worst of humanity. "Agent Evans," she said, shaking his hand. The exhumation went smoothly. "This way." She led them down a bunch of sterile hallways into an exam room. And there, on a steel table under these harsh fluorescent lights, were the skeletal remains of Daniel Peterson. Austin had never met the guy, but he knew he'd left a family behind, and Derek had taken him from them. Dr. Larson snapped on some latex gloves and pointed to the skull. Daniel Peterson died on September 23rd, 2022, she stated. The original detective called it a workplace accident, a fall from a ladder. He was wrong. The whole official story just fell apart right there on that morgue slab. Dr. Larson pulled up scans for Agent Evans, pointing to 2 different spiderweb-like fractures at the base of the skull. This wasn't from a fall, she said. This was from something heavy and blunt, probably a crowbar. She showed him how the hits came from above and behind. A fall would have damaged the front or side of his head. A totally different pattern. These were deliberate hits. And the most chilling part? Not a single defensive wound. No scrapes on his hands, nothing. Daniel Peterson never even saw it coming. Dr. Larson looked Agent Evans right in the eye and said, "This was murder." Then she slid a thick evidence file across the table. Agent Evans snatched the file and walked out into the cold air, his phone already buzzing. Someone from the office said they had a visitor waiting. Man, this is the part where Austin's world just completely broke. The man waiting for them was George Peterson, the same George Peterson who had pushed a small wooden box into Kayla's hands just 5 nights earlier before disappearing. This was Daniel's father, the victim's father, the one witness who had stayed silent for 2 agonizing years. 20 minutes later, they were all in a conference room at the FBI building. George looked like he'd seen a ghost. He was hunched over, looking 10 years older, his face just a map of grief. The second he saw Austin, he shot up, his chair clattering behind him, and just fell to his knees, right in front of my friend. The words just came out as a choked sob. "I'm so sorry." He was looking up at Austin, a completely broken man. "I should have gone to the police 2 years ago. Daniel's daughter. She deserves to know the truth. I failed her. I failed everyone." Austin was just frozen, watching this poor man shatter on the floor. Agent Evans gently helped George back into his chair. "George, we need you to tell us everything now." Shaking, George nodded and pulled a small USB drive from his pocket, sliding it over. "This wasn't on the other recording," he whispered. "I held this one back. I didn't know if I'd ever have the courage." Without saying a word, Evans plugged the drive into his laptop. A single video file popped up. He hit play. This next part is insane. It's like something out of a horror movie. The video that played was absolute garbage quality, super grainy, filmed from down low like a phone was hidden between wine barrels in the cellar. The timestamp in the corner read September 25th, 2022 at 11:52 p.m. This was just 48 hours after some other guy, a foreman on the property, had been killed. This new guy, Ryan, stumbles into the frame, completely hammered. His brother, Tyler, is just leaning against a crate with this disgusting smirk on his face. You can hear Ryan's slurred voice just gloating. The foreman was pathetic. He cried, "Please, my wife, my daughter." Then Ryan just lets out this cold, empty laugh. "Vince told me, it's him or you. I chose to live." Tyler's smirk just gets wider. "What happens if your wife finds out?" Ryan's smile turns predatory. I'll do the same damn thing to her. She's worth $3 million to me in life insurance. Easy. The screen just cut to black. A part of Austin had to have suspected there was more rot at that place, but this was a whole other level of evil. The cryptic warnings, the weird feelings, it was all pointing to something dark. But to hear those words, that casual, ice cold confession, that's what made it so horrifyingly real. Agent Evans snapped the laptop shut and looked straight at George Peterson. Why didn't this Vince guy kill you? You were a witness, a loose end. George just shook his head. Apparently, this Ryan psycho had never even told his partner that his own father was there. He was embarrassed that his dad was working as a handyman at his rich wife's vineyard. He told Vince that George was just some random temp. I used an old Nokia to record it, George explained. No GPS, no internet. And I only went to that cellar at exactly 11:47 p.m. Austin said you could see the light bulb go off over Agent Evans's head. The camera's blind spot. Exactly, George confirmed. For 3 minutes, every night, the system went down for maintenance. It was a glitch. I timed it. Vince never even knew he existed until that moment. Evans leaned back, a grim smile on his face. We hacked their surveillance logs last night. That 11:47 p.m. blind spot is a software bug from 2020. They were just too cheap to ever fix it. George nodded. That's how I stayed hidden. But his hands were shaking uncontrollably. I was a coward, he whispered. I should have gone to the police right after he killed that man. I was scared of Vince, scared of my own son. I thought they'd find me. So I just kept recording, hoping someone would finally figure it out. I heard later what really went down. Derek, poor bastard, finally broke. He sat right in front of Sarah, his eyes all haunted, and just laid it out. I saw him, he told her. I saw Jake pressuring you about the vineyard. I knew he was coming for you. Man, the guilt had been eating him alive for 2 years, and his fear for Sarah finally won out over his fear of Jake. Sarah just looked at this completely shattered guy. I can't imagine what she felt. Part of her probably wanted to scream at him for staying quiet while Michael's killer walked around free. But instead, she just said, "You saved my life." Derek started crying again, saying, "But Michael's little girl, she has to grow up without her dad. That's on me." Agent Peterson, the Fed in charge, told him right then, "You're going to testify. Everything you just said is evidence now." And Derek, he just whispered, "I know. I'm ready." Peterson turned to his partner. "All business. Get this to the district attorney now and find out who Brittany Hayes is sleeping with. Jake has to have someone else in his pocket." His partner just smirked, saying he was already on it. Sarah, she could barely stand. Her legs were like rubber. Derek looked up at her, his face just this mess of shame and some tiny flicker of hope. I don't know if she'll ever forgive him, but he gave her the truth, which is a hell of a lot more than Jake ever did. Later that night, they had her crammed into a surveillance van that smelled like old coffee. She was stuck between the feds, staring at a wall of screens, watching this life that wasn't hers anymore. Through the window, she could see the entrance to some fancy resort up in the hills. It was around 6 p.m. The sun was setting, all gold and orange. "Targets are on the move," Peterson said, pointing at a screen. A black Mercedes pulled up, and there he was, my best friend, Jake. He got out, fixing his $1,000 suit, looking like he owned the whole damn world. I can't wrap my head around it. Sarah told me her heart just stopped. That was her husband, the man she loved, and He was on his way to finalize the plan to murder her. Then another agent called out, "Second vehicle approaching." A silver Lexus. A woman got out. Tall, mid-40s, blonde hair pulled back so tight it probably hurt. She was all business in a power suit and heels that looked sharp enough to be weapons. "Brittany Hayes," Peterson said, his eyes glued to the monitor. "That's her." Sarah told me she felt sick, asking, "What is she to him?" Though she already knew the answer. "More than his lawyer," Peterson said quietly. "Just watch." On the screen, Jake walked right up to Brittany. He didn't shake her hand. He put his hand on the small of her back, leaning in to say something as they walked inside. It was so casual, so familiar. It was how you touch someone you're sleeping with. The nausea just washed over Sarah. "Room 307, Peterson said, looking at a tablet. "Booked under a fake name, paid cash. They've been meeting here every couple of weeks for 6 months." Then he got on his radio. "Alpha team, you are a go. Plant the device and get out. We need audio," he ordered. A voice crackled back. "Copy that." On another screen, Sarah saw two agents dressed like hotel maintenance guys slide into room 307. They were fast. One picked the lock, while the other hid a tiny microphone under a table. In and out in less than 30 seconds. Peterson tuned the audio feed, and suddenly the van filled with the sounds from the room. A door, footsteps, quiet voices, and then, crystal clear, was Jake's voice. "We have to be careful. Peterson has been asking questions. He has my father's recordings. The FBI knows about Michael." Brittany's voice was like ice. "Your father is irrelevant. He's a drunk," she said. "He has no credibility. And Michael's case was officially closed 2 years ago. My husband made sure of that." "My God. Your husband," Jake said. And you could hear the bitter laugh. So useful. "He did what he was paid to do," Brittany shot back. "He ruled Michael's death a workplace accident. No autopsy, no questions. He's been a valuable asset." Sarah felt like she was going to throw up. Detective Connor Hayes, Brittany's husband. He covered up Michael's murder. He took a bribe from the man sleeping with his wife to bury a homicide. As Sarah sat there, she heard the sound of a wine cork popping. They were planning her murder over a glass of expensive wine. What Sarah heard next was the stone-cold plan for her own death. "After tomorrow night," Brittany said, smooth as silk. "Sarah will be gone. A car accident on Highway 29, just like we planned. You'll get 100% of the vineyard. We sell to Tyler for $8.5 million. I leave my husband. And we can finally be together." Jake just chuckled. "Tyler gets his 30% cut first. After that, we're ghosts. Costa Rica, new identities, a new life." "But what about Caleb and Ashley?" Brittany asked. The silence that followed was terrifying. Then Jake's voice came back, a low whisper. "They're loose ends. If they ask questions, I'll pin Michael's murder on them. I already got their prints on the crowbar. Tyler's crew handled it." Sarah was holding onto a bench in that van so hard her knuckles were white. Caleb and Ashley. Just two kids who worked at the vineyard. He was going to send them to prison for a murder he committed, just to save his own skin. It was all a setup. Trapping Ashley with debt, promising Caleb a big payday. All of it was a trap. Agent Peterson just shook his head. "The man is a stone-cold psychopath." Then, through the static, they heard clothes rustling, a zipper. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut. She heard Brittany murmur, "I love you." "I love you too," Jake answered. "After tomorrow, it's only us." The man I knew was gone. This was someone else entirely. This whole thing is just ice in your veins. To think, Sarah was sitting in the back of a dark FBI van, listening to the man she married, my best friend Jake, calmly planning to have her killed. When the recording ended, Agent Peterson turned to her. "Are you okay?" he asked. What a question! She knew Jake wanted her dead, but hearing him and his lawyer, Brittany, talk about it like a business merger, that kind of wound never heals. And it turned out Brittany was the puppet master. She'd forged Sarah's dad's will and helped Jake plan everything, all while her own husband was unknowingly covering their tracks. It wasn't just Jake's greed, it was a whole conspiracy. Then Peterson pulled up a new file. Detective Connor Hayes, a 32-year veteran cop. This guy Hayes was supposedly a hero cop with a perfect record until he wasn't. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper when she asked, "How much did Jake pay him?" Peterson just kept scrolling. They'd found an offshore account with $87,000 moved to Hayes just 2 days after my friend Michael was found dead. That's the price of a cop's soul. Peterson put his team on high alert. They had to bring Detective Hayes in immediately. If Brittany was using her own husband to block a murder investigation, they had no idea how deep the rot went. Sarah asked if Hayes knew about the affair. Peterson shook his head. Doubtful. Brittany was playing the sickest game imaginable, using her husband to protect her lover. When the truth came out, Connor Hayes' entire life would be incinerated. His marriage, his career, everything he'd built. Up in smoke. Agent Peterson snapped his laptop shut. "Okay, team," he said, his voice like flint. "We're opening a full investigation into Hayes. I want to know everything he knows, and if he's still on Brittany's payroll." In the van, another agent was on the radio, telling Alpha Team to pull back. They had what they needed. Bravo Team was ordered to stay put, to keep eyes on Jake and Brittany 24/7. Every single move was to be logged. A voice just said, "Copy that." All Sarah could do was stare at the hotel on the monitor. In a few hours, Jake and Brittany would walk out of that room smiling, thinking they'd gotten away with it all. They had no clue the feds had every single word on tape. And just like that, everything he thought he knew was about to go up in smoke. He called me that night, and I can still hear the tremor in his voice when he asked, "So, what happens now?" Derek told me the FBI agent Thompson just sat across from him, his gaze like steel. "Now," Thompson said, "we spring the trap. Kayla is planning to stage your murder tomorrow night on Highway 29, only we'll be waiting for her. The second she tries anything, we got her." I heard Derek take a shaky breath over the phone. Thompson apparently had this cold, grim smile. "It's going to be a show," he'd said. Derek was just trying to process it, trying to remember how to breathe in this twisted new reality. Tomorrow, it would be over. But first, they had to unravel the story of Detective Connor Sullivan. Derek described the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit to me, a huge, sterile place humming with servers where everything felt hushed and heavy. It was 8 at night. The place mostly cleared out, but Agent Thompson was locked onto a screen, just tearing through digital walls. Derek and a younger agent were watching over his shoulder as he pulled up encrypted bank records and hidden transaction logs. "Got you," Thompson whispered, his finger tapping the monitor. "Detective Connor Sullivan, let's see what you've been hiding." A spreadsheet flooded the screen, a waterfall of numbers. Thompson highlighted one line in yellow. "An offshore account, Cayman Islands," he said. "Opened March 2022, the same month Austin was killed." And there it was, plain as day. $87,000, funneled from a shell company named Baltic Imports. The younger agent leaned in. Baltic Imports, he recognized it. That's one of Landon Vance's fronts? Thompson just nodded. Exactly, Thompson said. And it wasn't a one-off payment. He showed Derek 18 different transfers between 2022 and 2024. Small drops, $5,000 here, $10,000 there, all perfectly structured to fly under the radar. It all added up to that 87 grand. Derek told me he just stared, his stomach twisting into a cold knot. For 2 years, Detective Sullivan had been taking blood money from a monster. Every single deposit was a bribe to keep his mouth shut about what really happened to Austin. There's more, Thompson said, clicking open another file. A second offshore account, this one in Panama, opened in June of 2023. The balance was $120,000. The source was just listed as unknown. The other agent folded his arms. Unknown or just buried deep? He asked. Buried deep, Thompson confirmed. This cash was laundered through 3 banks in 3 different countries. Whoever moved that money was a pro, but Thompson had somehow traced it back to another one of Landon Vance's shell corporations. The younger agent just shook his head in disgust. Sullivan wasn't just a dirty cop. He was on Vance's payroll. But why? Derek asked him, and he sounded so lost when he told me this part. He was a decorated cop for 32 years. Why throw everything away for a guy like Landon Vance? Thompson opened one last file. This, he said, is where it gets ugly. Let me show you. A police report filled the screen. It was an arrest record for a 19-year-old girl named Chloe Sullivan. She'd been busted on August 14, 2021, for possession of 150 grams of cocaine with intent to distribute. The mugshot showed this scared kid who looked just like her dad. She had the same strong jaw, the same serious eyes. That's Sullivan's daughter, the young agent murmured. Thompson scrolled through the report. She was looking at a massive federal felony charge, he explained. We're talking a mandatory minimum of 5 to 10 years. But then something strange happened. He pulled up a case dismissal form dated September 22nd, 2021. The cocaine, the entire basis for the case against her, had literally vanished from the police evidence locker. Just gone. No paperwork, no internal investigation. Nothing. Without the evidence, the DA's hands were tied. The charges were dropped. Chloe Sullivan walked free. A sick, heavy silence filled that room. Landon Vance made the evidence disappear. That's our theory, Thompson said. He saved Connor's daughter, the agent said, connecting the dots. And, in return, Sullivan owed him. Big time. Thompson leaned back in his chair, finally closing the file. So, when Austin was murdered in September 2022, Sullivan was the first officer on the scene. He officially ruled it a workplace accident in under 48 hours. Never ordered an autopsy, no forensics, no questions asked. He buried the case before it even started. The agent's jaw was clenched. Sullivan is Landon Vance's guy on the inside, he said. He's been the guardian angel for his entire criminal operation for 2 years. Derek told me he finally found his voice again. And his wife, Brittany. Does she know about any of this? Thompson pulled up their marriage license, then their bank statements. It's impossible to say for sure, Thompson admitted. They kept their finances mostly separate. But we did find this. Sullivan wired $20,000 to Brittany's personal account in January of 2023. There's no memo attached. The agent just frowned. Was it a cut of the bribe? Or just a husband giving his wife cash? It could be nothing, Thompson said. But let's focus on what we can prove. Brittany forged Mr. Williams's will back in 2020. She's been Kayla's lawyer and accomplice for at least 6 months. And her husband, Detective Connor Sullivan, covered up a murder for them. They were all in it together. Derek told me he just sank into a chair, the whole world spinning. Kayla, Brittany, Sullivan, Vance. It was this massive, sick web of corruption and betrayal and murder. And somehow, his family's vineyard was at the absolute center of it all. His dad's entire legacy, the place he poured his soul into, was just a chess piece in a twisted game played by sociopaths. What about Chloe? Derek asked. Sullivan's daughter. Is she involved? Thompson shook his head. No evidence points that way, he said. She's a biology major at UC Davis. From everything we can tell, she has no clue what her father did to keep her out of a federal prison. The younger agent walked to the window, staring out at the city lights. Sullivan sold his soul to save his daughter, he said, his voice a weird mix of disgust and pity. You can almost see the logic, but it doesn't make it right. He let a murderer walk free. He's been protecting a monster for 2 years. I need you to understand how insane this next part is. Derek's whole life came down to a single moment in that cold FBI office. He looked at Agent Thompson and just asked him, "So, what now?" Thompson turned from a whiteboard that was just a chaotic mess of names and arrows, and his face was like stone. "We take her down," he said, the words echoing in the quiet room. "Tomorrow night, Highway 29, mile marker 52. Kayla's planning to kill you, make it look like a car crash. But we'll be there waiting." Thompson stood, and I can just picture him cracking his knuckles. It's a full-blown sting operation. We let Kayla play out her sick little fantasy. She drives you out there, thinking she's about to become a very rich widow. The second she makes her move, we swarm her. It'll be a clean bust, with evidence so solid she'll die in prison. And then he looked right at my friend. "You're the bait, Derek. Can you handle that?" And Derek told me in that one instant, he saw everything. He saw Austin, the man his wife left to die in their own cellar. He saw Ryan, the terrified vineyard manager who spent 2 years secretly recording everything, putting his own life on the line. He thought about everyone else Kayla had manipulated and threatened to get what she wanted. And he thought of his own dad and how she was trying to poison his entire legacy. "Yes," Derek said, his voice pure steel. "I'll do it." Agent Thompson gave a single sharp nod. "Good," he said. "Phase 12. We map out the trap. Every detail, every contingency. We get one chance at this. We can't screw it up." A grim, tight smile crossed Thompson's face. "This," he said, "is going to be one for the history books." Derek pushed himself to his feet, his legs trembling. Tomorrow night, on some desolate highway, his marriage would finally, violently be over. His wife was going to try to murder him, and the feds were going to be there to watch it happen. He just had to survive long enough for them to make the arrest. He told me that briefing room felt like a freezer, all cold metal and the hum of fluorescent lights. There was a long steel table, and around it were 12 federal agents in dark tactical gear, every one of them armed. Agent Thompson stood at the head of the table, running the show. A laptop next to him was projecting a satellite map of the vineyard onto a huge screen. Derek was sitting near the back, right next to Ryan. He said the guy looked like he'd aged a decade in a week. His face was ghost white and his hands were shaking so much he could barely hold his coffee cup. This was the man who saw Kayla murder Austin, the man who risked everything for 2 years, just hoping for a day like this. And the architect of all this, the guy planning the takedown of my best friend's wife, was Agent Miller. Derek told me how he just took command of the room. "Listen to me," he said, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "We have one shot. If we blow this, Kayla walks free. Derek dies and her whole criminal empire keeps churning out dirty money. That's not happening while I'm in charge. Do you get me?" The room shot back a chorus of "Yes, sir." Miller pointed a red dot at a map on the screen. Ashford Vineyard, 50 acres, main house, wine cellar, stables. At 8 p.m., Kayla Hayes is meeting her husband Derek down there. He's told her he's broken, that he's signing it all over. She thinks she's won. What she has no idea about is us. Agent Miller clicked to the next slide, a blueprint of the wine cellar. "Derek's going to be wearing a microtransmitter. Looks just like a button on his jacket," he explained. "We'll have live audio and his exact GPS location, second by second. We'll hear everything Kayla says. He'll also have this." Derek said. Miller held up a device that looked like a black watch. "It's a panic button. He hits it once, we're through the door in 10 seconds. No hesitation." One of the agents asked the question on everyone's mind. What if she pats him down? Finds the wire? Miller just nodded, like he expected it. "Good question. Derek is going to tell her he's nervous and wants to record it for his own protection. It's a story that makes sense. She'll buy it. And what if she doesn't?" That was Derek. He told me he was trying so hard to keep the fear out of his voice. "Then you hit the button," Miller said, his tone absolute. "And we come in fast and hard. But let's all hope it doesn't get to that. We need Kayla on that recording confessing. We need her talking about the counterfeiting ring, about her plans to have you killed. The more she talks, the deeper her own grave gets." Miller then showed a slide with red dots all over the property, marking the agent's positions. "Alpha team is in the stables. Bravo, you're behind barrels in the south corridor of the cellar. Charlie team, you're on the roof of the main house running long-range surveillance. Delta team, you'll be in 3 unmarked cars at the main entrance. Echo team, that's me and Agent Davis. We'll be in the mobile command van a half-mile out. What about me?" The question came from Derek's sister, Chloe. It was barely a whisper. Miller turned to her. "You're in the tunnel. The secret access point only you know. You stay there until you get the all clear. If Kayla or her brother Austin make a move for that tunnel, you use the emergency exit and you run. Do not, and I mean do not, engage them. Understood?" Chloe just nodded. "Understood." Miller looked back at my friend. "Your only job is to keep Kayla talking. Ask her why she did it. You have to sell her on the idea that you are beaten, terrified, and ready to give her anything she wants. The longer she talks," Miller repeated, "the more we have to put her away forever. But if you see a weapon, if she gives you a bad look, you hit that button. Don't you dare try to be a hero. We are right there with you." Derek told me he could feel his hands shaking under the table and was praying no one could see. What if she brings Austin or someone else? Agent Miller leaned forward. "We're tracking them all. Austin is at his downtown office. Her other key people are all accounted for. We've had eyes on them 24/7. If one of them even starts driving toward the vineyard, we'll know." Miller looked at his watch. "It's 10 o'clock. Derek, you need to call her. Now. You have to convince her you're ready to give up everything. My buddy pulled out his phone, his heart just hammering in his chest. He said he was sure everyone in the room could hear it. Miller slid a piece of paper over to him, a script basically with the main points to hit. "Don't sound like you're reading," Miller said, his voice softening for the first time. "Just let her hear it. You're exhausted. You can't fight anymore. You're done. Kayla needs to believe she has completely and totally destroyed you." Derek nodded, his mouth completely dry, and he dialed her number. It rang twice. "Derek?" Her voice was like toxic syrup, all fake concern. The same damn voice she used when she swore up and down that she loved him. "Hey, is everything okay?" He made his voice crack, made it sound hollow. "Kayla, you were right. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep this place going by myself," he managed to say. He told me you could feel the smile on the other end of the line. Just feel her enjoying his surrender. "What are you saying, Derek?" He took a shaky breath, trying to sound pathetic. "I'm saying, you win. Let's just sell the vineyard. Bring the papers to the wine cellar tonight. 8 o'clock. I'll sign." There was another pause, even longer this time. "Are you serious? You're actually doing this?" He squeezed his eyes shut, thinking of all the sleepless nights, all the fear she'd put him through. "I'm sure, I want it to be over." "Okay," Kayla said, her voice turning into this sick, sweet purr. "Okay, honey, that's a good boy. I'll bring Austin with me to witness. We'll make it nice and official. You're finally making the right choice." "I know," he whispered. "See you at 8, in the cellar." "I love you, Derek." He couldn't say it back. He just ended the call. The entire room was dead silent. A dozen agents just stared at him. Agent Miller gave him this slow, heavy nod. "You did good, son," he said. And his voice was this strange mix of pride and pure dread. She fell for it, completely. Derek put his phone down, his hands still trembling. Chloe came over and put her hand on his shoulder. "You were so brave," she whispered. "I could never do what you just did." Miller stood up, closing his laptop with a loud snap. "Okay, team, we have 10 hours. Gear up, run your comms checks, and stay focused. Tonight, we take down Kayla Hayes, Austin Hayes, and their whole sick operation. Let's get it done." The agents filed out, all business, but Miller stayed, walking over to Derek. "You know," he said softly, "it's not too late to walk away." For the next 10 hours, Derek just had to wait. He told me it was the worst part. Every tick of the clock was a countdown to walking into that cellar, to facing the woman who had shared his bed and plotted his death. He just sat there, thinking about everything that led to this, thinking about how much he had loved her and how she had twisted that love into a weapon to try and take everything from him. The agents were moving, setting up, preparing for war, and my friend, my brother, was just sitting there, knowing he was the bait in the trap. There was no turning back. He had to see it through. When Derek tells me about what happened next, it's the silence before it all went down that haunts me. He walked down into that huge wine cellar, the air thick and cold. It was 8 o'clock, right on the dot. He said his heart was beating so loud he was afraid the mic would pick it up. That little transmitter was sewn into his jacket button, and the panic watch was cold against his wrist. He flicked on the lights, and the place just came alive with rows of wine bottles and old oak barrels. He stood there by a long tasting table, and he told me his hands were shaking so bad he had to clasp them behind his back just to look steady. Outside, hidden in the dark, a dozen federal agents were listening to every single breath he took, A few were even tucked away in a hidden passage right there in the cellar with him. A half a mile down the road, his sister Chloe and Agent Miller were listening to a live feed, hearing every rustle of his jacket, every nervous breath. Then, at 5 minutes past 8, he heard them. Footsteps on the stone stairs. 3 sets. The first was Austin, Kayla's brother, looking smug in an expensive suit. Behind him was some other guy, looking pale and nervous, his eyes scanning everything. And with them was Kayla, my friend's wife, holding a briefcase, her face as cold and hard as the cellar walls. "Derek," Kayla said, her smile never once touching her eyes. "I'm so glad you decided to be reasonable." He didn't say anything, just watched as they approached the table. She put the briefcase down, snapped the latches open, and slid a thick stack of papers out. "The purchase and sale agreement," she announced, her voice flat. "Sign on pages 1, 5, and 9. $8.5 million will be wired to you within 48 hours. She pushed the contract and a pen toward him. Derek told me his hand was trembling as he picked up the pen. He pretended to look over the legal text, his mind racing, before putting the pen back down on the table. He told me it all came crashing down in the wine cellar, the place his family had built. Kayla was supposed to be signing the divorce papers. Instead, she just looked him dead in the eye and said, "Before I sign anything, Derek, I need to ask you something." He said he felt his stomach clench. "What is it now?" And she just laid it out there, cold as ice. "Why did you have Kevin Miller killed?" The whole room went silent. Derek said he just stared, his face a total blank, but his partner, Austin, went pale as a ghost. Jessica, his other associate, just snapped. "Kayla, that's insane. Just sign the damn papers." But Kayla's eyes were locked on Derek. "I know it all. The counterfeiting, the $47 million. I know about Cole. And I know you plan to have me killed tonight on Highway 29, right at mile marker 52. That's when Derek's calm facade shattered. He stood up, slowly pulling a Glock 19 from his jacket. "You were always too smart for your own good," was all Derek could manage to say, his voice completely flat. Kayla took a half step back, and he saw her hand move to her wrist, fumbling for a panic button. But before she could hit it, a whole section of the cellar wall just groaned and slid open. Everyone spun around. An agent, Tyler, stepped out of the darkness, holding a shotgun leveled right at Derek's chest. "Put the gun on the table, son," a voice echoed from the main doorway. It was his own father, Robert, his voice thick with a pain that cut Derek to the bone. Derek's face twisted. He couldn't believe it. "Dad?" Robert just pleaded, his voice cracking. "I told you it was over. I begged you. I'm not letting you hurt anyone else." But Derek didn't move, his eyes darting everywhere, his mind screaming for a way out of the nightmare. "Derek!" His dad's voice broke again as he stumbled backward. "What in God's name is happening?" "You need to stay out of this," Derek yelled back at him. Kayla started to reach for her phone, but Austin threw up his own shotgun, pointing it right at her. "I wouldn't," he stammered, his hands shaking. The air was so heavy you could barely breathe. Robert told me later he could hear his own heart pounding like a drum. He watched his own son's finger tighten on the trigger. And in that one single moment, all hell broke loose. A blinding flash and a deafening bang shook the cellar. FBI agents poured in from every direction. The stairs, hidden panels, even dropping from the ceiling. A web of red laser dots painted the room, all of them converging on Derek, Austin, and Jessica. A voice from a bullhorn screamed, "FBI, drop your weapons! Hands in the air!" The command echoed off the stone walls. For a second, that Derek said felt like an eternity. He just froze, pistol still gripped in his hand. His dad was certain, absolutely positive, that his son was about to start shooting. But then Derek's eyes scanned the room, saw the impossible odds, the agents closing in. The gun just fell from his hand, and the clatter on the concrete floor seemed to last forever. "On your knees, now!" an agent shouted. Derek told me his legs just gave out and he collapsed, his face a mask of shock and pure cornered rage. Austin was right there beside him, hands already in the air, sobbing like a child. But Kayla didn't even flinch. She just stood there, her face like it was carved from marble. 3 agents swarmed my friend, yanking his arms behind his back. 2 more cuffed Austin, and Agent Peterson walked straight to Kayla. He cuffed her hands behind her back with this unnerving calm, his voice completely flat as he read her the Miranda rights. "Kayla Clark, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and a whole list of other charges." She didn't struggle, didn't say a single word. Her eyes were fixed on Derek's dad, Robert, and the look she gave him, Derek said, was just pure, raw hatred. Austin was a total wreck, just wailing, "I didn't want any of this. He made me do it. He said Derek would kill me." One of the agents just grunted, "Save it for the district attorney," and hauled him to his feet. Peterson led Kayla away without a second glance, taking her up the stairs and out of Robert's life forever. Another agent, one Robert didn't know, came over to him, his expression a mix of professional duty and human relief. "Sir, are you all right?" All his dad could do was nod, his voice completely gone. He felt like he was going to collapse. The undercover agent, Tyler, finally lowered his shotgun and set it down. He walked over to Robert, his eyes looking 100 years old. "It's over now," he said quietly. "You're safe." And in that second, whatever strength Derek's dad had been holding on to just evaporated. He fell against Tyler, his body shaking with sobs he'd been choking back for God knows how long. Tyler just held him there, a steady rock in the middle of the chaos. "It's over," he said again. "You're safe now." From outside, Robert could hear the sound of car doors slamming shut. They were taking his son, my best friend, away. So Derek's on the floor in cuffs, and Agent Peterson walks over to him. He leans down, looks him right in the eye, and says, "We have to move you. We've got another situation." Derek told me his head was just spinning. He could barely focus. He managed to ask, "What kind of situation?" Peterson laid it out, all business. "Blake is talking. He wants a deal, says there's something in this tunnel we need to see, something that'll tie this whole thing up." Peterson then nodded at the undercover agent. "Tyler, show us." Tyler just gave this grim little nod and grabbed a heavy-duty flashlight from a table. "Follow me." He led them to that same hidden panel he'd come through earlier. He pushed it open, revealing a narrow stone passage that just vanished into complete darkness. "What are we looking at?" Peterson asked. In the dim glow from the cellar, Derek could see Agent Tyler's face was grim. "This is the main hub," he said. "If the boss, Cole, finds out we're down here, he can detonate this entire tunnel with one press of a button. I'd say we have 30 minutes tops before he realizes the raid happened." Peterson and Tyler shared this long look. Then Peterson just stared into the blackness. "Then we're wasting time. Secure the tunnel and get Blake's statement on the record. Let's move." As they forced Derek down into that cold, damp darkness, he said he could feel the walls closing in. He had this sick certainty that Whatever twisted final truth was left in his life was buried down there, deep beneath the home he grew up in. Miles away, they were throwing Austin into an armored truck, his face pressed against the mesh, his eyes still wild as the heavy steel door slammed shut. So picture this. Derek's dad, Robert, is in one police cruiser, a total wreck, just sobbing. Kayla is in another, her face like a blank sheet of ice. And Derek, they have him standing at the end of his own driveway, forced to watch as a team of agents dismantles his entire life. Agent Peterson is yelling orders into a radio. And then there was a sound, a deep, ground-shaking boom. The wine cellar underneath them just detonated. A massive fireball erupted from the earth, a pillar of flame that shot 50 feet into the night sky. The shockwave hit Derek like a freight train, knocking the wind out of him as the ground heaved. Every window in his house exploded, and a rain of splintered wood and twisted metal fell all over the vineyard his family had spent generations building. "Get down!" The scream, he found out later, came from Tyler. The undercover agent tackled Derek, throwing him to the ground and covering him with his own body as shrapnel hailed down around them. Agents were diving for cover behind their SUVs. Agent Peterson hit the deck behind the command truck, hands clamped over his ears. That blast just echoed through the valley, a sound you could feel in your teeth. When it finally ended, all that was left was the crackle of the fire and a piercing ringing in Derek's ears. Tyler helped him sit up. He felt something wet on his forehead, a small cut from a piece of flying debris. Tyler, his face chalk white, pressed his sleeve against it. "You okay, man?" he asked. Derek told me he could barely even nod. The world was still spinning. He said his hands were shaking just uncontrollably, and that god-awful ringing wouldn't stop. He could see Agent Peterson already inside his command van, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "Report! Now! What the hell was that?" Peterson's voice cut through the radio static, his face lit up by the blue glow of a laptop screen. "Got it. Trace the signal." The trigger was remote, activated from a satellite phone in Oakland. Peterson's jaw was set like stone. "It's Cole. He's destroying all the evidence." The wine cellar was just gone. Where his dad had built a beautiful tasting room, where Derek had poured his whole life into the family business, was now just a massive smoking crater in the earth. The printing press, the $47 million in counterfeit bills, all of it had been turned to ash. It all broke with a scream from one of the FBI vans. "I'll talk. I'll tell you everything." It was Leo. I remember Jake telling me how two agents just ripped the door open and Leo practically tumbled out onto the driveway. The guy was a complete mess, crying, shaking so hard he could barely stand. He just collapsed onto his knees, hands cuffed behind his back. "Please," he sobbed, his voice shredded. "Don't let me die. I'll give you anything you want." Agent Miller was on him instantly. "Start talking." And God, the whole story just flooded out of Leo. "Volkov, he's moving the money tonight. Oakland Port, Dock 47, in a container marked 7 Alpha. It's $200 million. He's loading it onto a ship right now. It sails at 10:30 p.m. If he hits open water, he's gone forever." Jake said. Miller checked his watch. 8:52 p.m. They had just over an hour and a half. Miller was already on his radio, shouting, "All units, converge on Oakland Port, Dock 47, lethal force is a go, Coast Guard seal the bay, air support, get airborne now." And the whole place just exploded into action. Agents were sprinting for their cars, and the night was suddenly filled with the sound of engines revving. 3 black SUVs just tore out of there, sirens wailing. Jake could hear the thumping sound of helicopter blades starting to spin up. Miller pointed at a tech guy. "Get me 50 agents to that dock. SWAT, Tactical Bomb Squad. If Volkov has more explosives, we find them before he turns a city block into a crater." "Got it," the agent said, his phone already glued to his ear. My buddy Jake just stumbled to his feet, and his brother-in-law, Ethan, was right there to catch him. He told me he could feel the blood on his forehead, warm and sticky, but the pain felt like it was happening to someone else. He walked straight up to Miller. "I'm going with you," he said, his voice just dead inside. Miller's face was like a stone wall. "Mr. Clark." "Don't," Jake cut him off. "My name is Jake, and that wasn't a question. He just turned my family's entire life's work into a bonfire. I'm going to be there when you put the cuffs on him." Miller just stared at him for what felt like forever. Then his eyes flicked over to Ethan, who gave this tiny, almost invisible nod. "He needs to be there," Ethan said. Miller let out this heavy sigh, the sound of pure exhaustion, and pointed to an SUV. "Fine, get in, but you stay inside that truck when we engage. You understand?" "Crystal clear," Jake said. The tech agent ran over with a first aid kit and slapped a bandage on Jake's head. Jake and Ethan got into the back of Miller's SUV, with the tech guy, Davis, riding shotgun. Miller slammed the driver's side door shut. "Hold on," was all he said before he punched the gas. The SUV rocketed forward, kicking up a shower of gravel as it peeled down the driveway. They hit the main road with lights and sirens just screaming, painting everything red and blue. A whole convoy of federal cars fell in right behind them. More SUVs, armored trucks, everything. Looking up, Jake saw 3 choppers banking hard, flying west toward the distant glow of the city lights. The radio in the truck crackled. "Coast Guard Cutter Steadfast and Cutter Vigilant are moving to position. ETA 15 minutes. We are establishing a full blockade at the mouth of the bay." "Copy," Miller snapped, his knuckles bone white on the steering wheel. "That ship does not leave U.S. waters, under any circumstances." Jake told me he just stared out the window as the dark countryside flashed by. His vineyard, his home, was gone, just a pillar of black smoke scarring the night sky. Everything his dad had built, everything he himself had almost died for, was just ash. But Volkov was still out there. And if they didn't get to him in the next 90 minutes, he'd be gone too. Ethan reached over and squeezed his hand. "We're going to get him, man," he said, his voice low. Jake just nodded, his jaw set like stone. "We have to." Miller's voice filled the cab. "All right, listen up. This is it. We get Volkov, we get the money, and we burn this whole damn network to the ground." The SUV sped down the freeway, a single point of light tearing through the darkness. They reached the port just after 9:30 p.m., a convoy of maybe 15 cars moving with this terrifying, predatory quiet. Jake tells me this part is just seared into his memory. The Oakland docks at night feel like another world, this maze of steel canyons under the sickly orange glow of the security lights. You can smell the salt and the diesel in the air. The giant cranes look like metal dinosaurs against the black sky. Agent Miller was driving, his focus absolute. Next to him, Agent Davis was tracking the helicopters circling above. And in the back, there was Jake, with Ethan beside him, his hand clenched on the door handle, his heart just hammering against his ribs. "Dock 47 is straight ahead," Davis said, his voice quiet. And that's when Jake saw it. A huge, rust-streaked shipping container with 7 Alpha spray-painted on the side, hanging there from a crane. Below it was a freighter, the Neva Star, flying a Russian flag. And standing there like he was the king of the world was Dmitry Volkov. He was wearing a gray suit, his arms crossed. Even from 100 yards away, the guy just radiated this chilling, dangerous calm. He looked to be in his mid-50s, silver hair slicked back, with a face that looked like it was carved from ice. He had 6 men with him, all holding AK-47s, just standing there, not even trying to hide. Agent Miller cut the engine about 200 yards away as the other FBI vehicles fanned out, forming a silent, perfect perimeter. Jake watched as agents swarmed out of the vehicles, just disappearing into the shadows of the stacked containers. He figured there were at least 50 of them, all armed to the teeth, moving with the quiet precision of a wolf pack. Agent Davis was whispering into his mic. Coast Guard confirms they're in position. The bay is sealed. Nothing's getting out. Miller just nodded once. Snipers? 3 teams in position. They have eyes on all targets? Jake pressed his face against the window, his breath fogging up the glass. He saw one of Volkov's men holding a little black box with a single glowing red button. A cold wave of dread washed over him. Is that what I think it is? He whispered. C4 detonator, Davis confirmed, his voice flat. If we move in, he could blow this whole pier to kingdom come. Agent Miller grabbed a megaphone and stepped out of the truck. So, from inside the SUV, my friend Jake and his brother-in-law, Ethan, are just watching this nightmare unfold. Agent Miller steps out into the open, totally alone, and raises this megaphone. His voice booms across the dock. Volkov! This is the FBI. You are surrounded by 50 federal agents and the Coast Guard. We have snipers on every one of you. Put down your weapons and surrender now. The sound just echoed off all the metal. But Volkov, this guy was something else. He just tilted his head like he was listening to a mildly interesting question. Then he looked up and saw the 3 helicopters descending, their searchlights pinning him in a blinding white circle. He glanced out at the water, at the 2 huge Coast Guard ships aiming their own lights at him. And for a second, that stretched on forever. Everything was completely silent. And then Volkov smiled. It was this empty, horrifying smile that Jake said he'll never forget. He just let the pistol he was holding drop, and it clattered on the concrete. Then, slowly, he raised both his empty hands. I surrender, he said, his voice perfectly calm without a trace of fear. But his right-hand man, this young kid named Liam, was absolutely terrified and clearly not part of the plan. He was the one holding the C4 detonator, his thumb shaking right over the button. Boss, no, Liam shouted. We can still... But Volkov cut him off, his voice like a shard of glass. Liam, it is over. No, Liam screamed, and he thrust the detonator forward, his thumb jamming down. In that instant, a single gunshot ripped through the night. And Jake watched, completely horrified, as Liam's hand just disintegrated in a cloud of red mist. That one rifle shot sent everything into motion. The detonator went flying into the harbor, and one of Dmitry Volkov's men was on his knees, just screaming and staring at the bloody mess where his hand used to be. A calm voice came over the FBI radio. Sniper shot confirmed. Target neutralized. Detonator is in the water. And then they stormed the dock. I'm telling you, it was like a flood. 20 agents were on them in a heartbeat, a wave of tactical gear and rifles. And Volkov, The man at the center of all this chaos, he didn't even move. He just stood there as his entire world came crashing down. His men were on the ground in seconds, and in less than a minute, it was all over. Everyone was in cuffs, and the only sound was that guy screaming while a medic sprinted toward him. Agent Miller walked onto the dock, his face as hard and grim as the dark water below. He stopped right in front of the man himself. Dmitry Volkov, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, operating a counterfeit currency ring, and acts of terrorism. The words just hung there in the cold night air. Volkov just stared back, his eyes completely empty. A few feet away, Agent Davis was prying open the doors to that massive red shipping container. And inside, Jake told me, it was just row after row of cardboard boxes. Davis slashed one open with a knife. It was filled with shrink-wrapped bricks of $100 bills. "They're all counterfeit," he yelled out. 2,000 boxes, that's $200 million in fake cash. Miller barely gave it a glance, just told his team to secure the scene. I wasn't there at the docks, but Derek told me everything. He described how Agent Miller barked, "I want every last bill counted for evidence," and how the agents swarmed the place. And then he saw her. Kayla got out of the SUV. Her brother Austin stuck to her like glue. She watched them shove Sergei Volkov into an armored van. Derek said, right before the door slammed shut, Volkov locked eyes with Kayla. And he smiled. A smile that crawled under your skin. A smile that said, he knew a secret. The door thudded shut. And he was gone. The guy who'd been shot was loaded into an ambulance, his screams finally swallowed by the sirens. Agent Miller walked back to Kayla, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "It's over," he told her, his voice heavy. "Volkov is in custody. The whole counterfeit ring is dismantled. We got 200 million. Derek said for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Kayla acted like she could breathe again. He watched her knees buckle, but Austin was right there to catch her. "We did it," she whispered, and her brother just nodded. "Justice." That's when Agent Davis ran over, holding up a tablet. "Miller, you gotta see this." Volkov's phone, encrypted messages to Derek, Jessica, and Chief Hayes. Pay stubs, orders, it's all here. Derek told me that was the moment his life ended. The evidence tied them all together, a neat little package. The case looked airtight. A dark smile crossed Miller's face. "Good. Get it to the prosecutor. I want charges filed by morning." He looked back at Kayla. "We'll need your testimony. Probably in about 5 months. You think you can do that?" And she looked him right in the eye and nodded. "Yes, I'll be there." That's the part that still kills me. Agent Miller shook her hand, telling her how brave she was, how proud her father would be. As Kayla and Austin left, the docks were just a blur of flashing lights and chaos. Derek said she took one last look back at Dock 47, where that red container sat open, its secrets spilled for everyone to see. She thought it was over, but for my best friend, the absolute worst part was just starting. The United States District Court was a total zoo. I was there. Every seat was taken by reporters who looked like vultures, climbing over each other for a better view. I saw people Derek and Kayla had known their whole lives. And right there, front and center, was the family of Brandon Riley, the innocent man they said Derek had murdered. His widow, Olivia, was holding her 7-year-old daughter's hand, and the little girl's face was just empty. It was heartbreaking. Kayla sat with the prosecutor, with Austin right behind her, playing the part of the Rock. It was March 15th, 2025. 5 brutal months since the docks. 5 months of absolute hell for Derek, watching his life get ripped apart by lies. The bailiff's voice cut through the silence. All rise. The Honorable Judge Patricia Albright presiding. We all stood as the judge, this intimidating woman in her 60s, took her seat. Be seated, Judge Albright commanded. A side door opened and they brought them in. 6 people in bright orange jumpsuits, all chained together. And Derek was first, my best friend. He wouldn't even look at Kayla. His face was a stone mask. I tried to catch his eye, but he was a world away. Behind him was Jessica, her eyes puffy and red. Then her brother Ryan, who looked like he was going to be sick. Madison Hayes walked in with her chin up, defiant. But her father, former Chief Harrison Hayes, just looked completely broken. And last was Sergei Volkov, who looked as calm as if he were just walking to his car. They all sat down, surrounded by their lawyers. We are here for the sentencing in the matter of the United States versus Derek Clark and co-defendants. The judge began. D.A. Martinez, a sharp woman in a dark suit, stood up to read the charges. Derek Clark, first-degree murder in the death of Brandon Riley, conspiracy to commit murder in the attempted killing of Kayla Clark, counterfeiting $47 million, money laundering, obstruction of justice. I watched my friend as they read his death sentence. And he didn't even flinch. Jessica Vance, accomplice to murder, conspiracy, counterfeiting. Ryan Vance, accessory after the fact, obstruction. Madison Hayes, forgery, conspiracy, fraud. Harrison Hayes, accepting bribes, obstruction, evidence tampering. And Sergei Volkov, violations of the RICO Act, counterfeiting $200 million in U.S. currency, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder. D.A. Martinez finished and faced the judge. Your Honor, the prosecution requests the maximum possible sentence for all defendants. Judge Albright gave this slow, heavy nod. The court will now hear the victim impact statement. Mrs. Clark, please approach the stand. Kayla looked like her shoes were nailed to the floor. Austin squeezed her hand, and she walked to the podium. She had a speech written out on a piece of paper, but she never once looked at it. She didn't need to. She knew her lines by heart. I swear you could have heard a pin drop when Kayla started talking. She looked right at Derek, but he just stared at the wall ahead, refusing to give her anything. Her voice was a little shaky at first. Then it turned to steel. He didn't just betray me, she said. He murdered an innocent man, Brandon Riley, a 28-year-old father who was just doing his job, trying to take care of his family. She twisted the knife, talking about how Derek had forged her dad's will to steal from a children's hospital. Then her voice got cold. And he planned to have me killed as casually as if he were ordering a pizza. She wanted everyone to believe he was a monster, and then she turned to Brandon's widow. Olivia Riley was weeping, clutching her little girl. Kayla looked right at her. And Brandon Riley deserved so much more. His family deserves peace, and I can only hope that today gives them a small piece of that. When her performance was over, she stumbled back to her chair, shaking. Agent Miller was right there to help her. Judge Albright then looked at the defendants. Does anyone wish to make a statement? Derek's lawyer started to stand, but Derek's voice was ice. Sit down. The lawyer sat. No one else said a word. Very well, the judge said. Derek Clark, you have been found guilty on all counts for the murder of Brandon Riley and the conspiracy to commit the murder of Kayla Clark. I sentence you to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. The words hit the room like a physical blow, but Derek didn't react. Ryan Vance, You are sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. Ryan just collapsed, his body shaking with sobs. Jessica Vance, because of your cooperation, I sentence you to 6 years in federal prison. You will be eligible for parole after 4. Jessica squeezed her eyes shut as tears streamed down her face. Madison Hayes, you are sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Madison's defiant mask never slipped. Harrison Hayes, you are sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. The former chief of police finally looked up, his face just a canvas of pure despair. From the stand, I saw Sergei Volkov mouth something like, "I'm sorry" to Derek, but it meant nothing. Then the judge's voice sliced through the room. For your vast criminal conspiracy, I sentence you to life without parole. Volkov just offered this small, dead smile, like this was always how it was going to end. The judge lifted her gavel. All assets, including $200 million in counterfeit cash and $8.5 million from the vineyard sale, will go to St. Jude as per David Clark's original will. I saw Derek's face then. He froze. His father-in-law's final wish, twisted and used against him, was finally coming true. Then, the gavel cracked down. This court is adjourned. It was instant chaos. Cops swarmed the defense table, pulling them all to their feet. Kayla was escorted right past Derek. She didn't even look his way. Her brother, Austin, was a mess, just sobbing. But Jessica, she looked back one last time. Her eyes met Derek's. And in that one look, I saw it. And I know he did too. Pure, soul-crushing regret. Then she was gone. As the crowd started to leave, Olivia Peterson, holding her daughter's hand, walked up to Kayla. "Thank you," she choked out, tears in her eyes, "for not letting him win." And Kayla just pulled her into a hug. Two women who had lost so much, clinging to a lie. As those courtroom doors closed, sealing that chapter of Derek's life, Agent Miller put a hand on Kayla's shoulder. "I heard later," he said, "your father would be proud." Kayla whispered back that it was finally over, but Miller knew it wasn't. "Not quite," he said, pulling a folded paper from his jacket. He told her there was something she needed to see. The real will, the truth of what her father actually wanted. I can only imagine the look on her face. Miller just guided her toward the exit, ready to finally show her what her father's true legacy was, as they stepped out into the light, leaving the shadows of her lies behind for one final, devastating truth. The probate hearing a month later, in April of 2025, was nothing like the trial. The room was dead silent. It was just Derek, Agent Miller, his new lawyers, and me. Mr. Harrison, the attorney from New York, was there. And sitting on the table in front of him was the document that had destroyed my friend's life. David Clark's real last will and testament, dated September 1st, 2019, the very one Kayla had tried so desperately to make sure no one ever saw. Caleb told me you could practically taste the tension in that courtroom while the judge, a woman he said had kind eyes, reviewed the paperwork. She finally looked at them all. Regarding the estate of David Peterson, her voice cut through the silence, this court validates the original testament. The forgery is null and void. 60% of the vineyard, $5.1 million, was for Caleb Hayes. The other 40%, $3.4 million, went to St. Jude. After all the scheming, his father-in-law's real wishes were finally being honored. The gavel struck. This estate is now settled. When it was all done, Mr. Harrison, the lawyer, gripped Caleb's hand, saying his father-in-law was a truly good man and he was sorry for the long fight. An hour after that, Caleb was in a soulless FBI office. A video call flickered to life, showing a woman in her 40s with a St. Jude logo on her coat. Behind her were the colorful walls of a children's ward, and you could just make out the sounds of kids playing in the background. "Mr. Hayes," she said. Her smile was so genuine. "I'm Dr. Emily Vance. Thank you for making time for this." Caleb told me his voice was unsteady when he replied. Dr. Vance looked at him with such kindness. "First, I am deeply sorry for all you've been through. Your father-in-law's gift is just astonishing." She looked at her notes. His $3.4 million will establish the David Peterson Pediatric Cancer Research Center right here. "It's going to finance research," she went on, "into the very illnesses that took your mother-in-law, Sarah." And hearing that, man, Caleb just started to weep, tears streaming down his face without a sound. "Also," Dr. Vance added, "we're launching the Connor Riley Memorial Fund to honor the man who uncovered this. His courage saved lives." She smiled. "That fund has already raised $2 million. With it, we've treated 83 children. 83 families have hope because of what Connor did." My boy was just shattered, completely overcome. Agent Miller had to put a hand on his shoulder just to ground him. Dr. Vance continued, saying they just had the ribbon cutting. "Connor's widow, Jessica, and his daughter Lily were here," she said, her own voice thick with emotion. "Jessica wanted me to tell you how grateful they are," she said. "Connor always did what was right. So did Caleb. He got my husband justice. And now Connor's name will save children. It's all we could have asked for." That's when Caleb really broke, and Agent Miller just pulled him into a hug. Dr. Vance just waited, her own eyes wet. When Caleb could finally look at the screen again, she gave him this one last piece of truth. "Your father-in-law loved you, Caleb. He wanted to leave a legacy of healing. And because you fought for him, that legacy is real. We will never forget David Peterson. We won't forget Sarah. And we will never, ever forget Connor Riley." All Caleb could manage was a whispered thank you, saying it's what they both would have wanted. After the call, Agent Miller leaned back. "That's it, man. The case is officially closed," he told him. "Kayla, Tyler, Ashley, they're all serving their sentences. The counterfeit operation is done. St. Jude got their donation. We got justice." He then pushed a folder toward him. Inside was the last piece. The FBI was returning full ownership of Ashford Vineyard. The land, the house, everything. It was his. What came next was entirely up to him. He just stared at that folder. The name of a place that caused so much goddamn pain, now holding what was left of his future. The way Kayla had desecrated his father-in-law's memory, it was almost absolute. She warped it into something ugly. But I remember talking to him about it. "Your father-in-law built this place from the dirt up, man," I told him. "He planted every single vine himself. That vineyard was his soul. It can be yours now, if you'll let it." He was so lost, asking me what he was supposed to do with it all. I just looked at him. "You rebuild." Not what it was. Something new, something that honors David, that honors Connor, and that gives you a damn life. When he finally opened that file, it was real. And I saw the first spark of hope in his eyes in years. "Okay," he whispered. "I'll do it." I heard Agent Miller stood and offered his hand. "Good luck, Caleb. You earned it." He shook hands with him and his partner. Then he and I walked out of that sterile government building and into the bright April sun. The entire drive back to Napa, he was just quiet, watching the hills and the rows of vines flash by. His father-in-law's dream was still there, buried under the wreckage Kayla left behind, and he was going to bring it back. Not for the feds, not for those monsters, but for David, for Sarah, for Connor, and for himself. This was the start of Ashford Vineyard's second life, 8 months after he chose to fight. On December 24th, 2025, Caleb was standing at the edge of his land as the sun set. I've seen it. The place is transformed. Every trace of that nightmare has been torn out of the earth and replaced with something clean. The old cellar where Kayla ran her whole sick operation is gone, completely leveled. Now there's this gorgeous 2-story building with huge windows. The first floor is now a small museum, the Prohibition History Archive. The second is a modern wine vault for the local community. But the real soul of the new Ashford is the tasting room he named for Connor Riley. Caleb walked me inside, flipped a switch, and the room glowed with this warm light. On the main wall is this giant photo of Connor, smiling in his work gear out in the fields. Under it, a plaque says, Connor Riley, 1994 to 2022. His courage exposed evil. His memory inspires hope. They've got the articles framed, an FBI commendation, a note from his folks. Every day, people stop and read his story and learn what he sacrificed on that very ground. That was 2 years ago. The story, as Caleb and his wife Brittany tell it now, has a much better ending. He walked in with 2 glasses of wine just as I was thinking about all this. He looks healthy, so far from the haunted man I helped through all that darkness. He's 11 years sober and never looked back. Ready? He asked her, and she just beamed at him. They hired a young couple, Logan and Olivia, both 28, to run production. Logan is a genius with the grapes, and Olivia has the whole valley buzzing about them again, for the right reasons. It's not some criminal front anymore, just an honest place doing good work. Last June, Caleb and Brittany flew to Ireland, to County Cork, to find her father's roots. They spent weeks going through old church records, tracing the Peterson name back 200 years. They ended up on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic, where they had a little memorial for her dad. She scattered wildflowers into the ocean, giving him the final goodbye she never could. When they came home, they planted a California redwood near the tasting room as a living monument for Connor. It's only about 6 feet tall now, but it will watch over that valley for centuries. A simple bronze plaque with his name is at the base. That night, Caleb and Brittany were sitting out on their porch. The air smelled like pine, and Christmas lights glowed along the eaves. Caleb put 2 glasses on the table between their chairs, and then revealed a bottle he'd been saving. A 1996 Chateau Margaux, bottle number 217. It was the exact wine that had opened the secret door to Kayla's whole criminal network. Brittany had to laugh. "You actually kept that thing." He was grinning. "The FBI gave it back. It was evidence," he said. "I thought it deserved a better end to its story." He opened it like a professional and poured. It was this deep, blood-red color, glowing in the light. Brittany raised her glass. "To Connor," she said, her voice soft. "To my father, and to justice." Caleb nodded, touching his glass to hers. "And to second chances." The glasses clinked in the quiet night as she took a sip. It's the little things that wreck him the most. Derek told me about this one image he can't get out of his head. He heard about Kayla and her old friend, Austin, sitting out at the vineyard at sunset, just as the last of the leaves were gone. They opened a bottle that her dad had saved for almost 30 years, a bottle Derek always thought he and Kayla would share. He pictures them sitting there with that one giant redwood watching over them, and it just guts him. He heard Austin told her, "Your father would be so damn proud," and she just whispered back, "I hope so." Then Austin looked her dead in the eye and said, "I know so." After that, nothing. They just sat in the quiet, drinking that wine that was supposed to be for him, for them. That place stopped being their home and started becoming hers. But that quiet, that peace she has now, God, it was born from a storm that Derek started. He knows Kayla shared a letter telling her side of it all. He knows how it looks, that he betrayed her, that he chose money over their entire life together, and that he backed her into a place where she felt like she had no other choice but to burn it all down. He told me about the strength she found, how Austin just happened to show up right when everything fell apart, becoming the protector Derek was supposed to be. The wound is still there for both of them, and now that he's out, Derek admitted to me that seeing her life go on without him, seeing her heal, is a special kind of hell he has to walk through every single day. He gets it, though. He told me that if she'd gone for pure revenge, it would have eaten her alive, the same way his own mistakes devoured him. So, she chose justice, and he did his time. He watched from a cell while she rebuilt their life into her own, and he can't even be mad about it. The hardest part for him is hearing the warning she gives people now, because it's the same one he'd give. If you see that poison in your own life, that greed or desperation, you have to fight it. You have to scream for help, because silence makes you part of the breakdown. Forgiveness, he says, isn't for him to ask for. It's about her refusing to let what he did ruin the rest of her life. He stole her trust, but he couldn't steal her future, and that's the truth he has to live with now. His story really makes you wonder, how does a man come back from destroying everything he ever loved? How do you claw your way out of a hole you dug yourself? I'm telling you this because people need to hear about more than just survival. They need to hear about accountability and the long, brutal road back from utter failure. It's a heavy story, man, and it's my friend's truth, filtered through his own regret and the pain I've watched him carry. This is his side of it, and maybe hearing it helps you understand how it all went so wrong,